Ruthless Aggression is one of the most celebrated periods in WWE history, and we just spent hundreds of hours reliving every single chair shot, title change, and chaotic moment so you don't have to. We're about to cover every single episode of Raw, SmackDown, and every pay-per-view from Ruthless Aggression, so buckle up and enjoy the ride. Here are 167 things that we learned binge-watching Ruthless Aggression.
My friends, let us pop back to 2002. It's actually a super interesting year for the WWE, as it was the first entire 12-month period where they had no proper competition. WCW had obviously been bought in 2001, and the invasion angle was over already. The Attitude Era is basically dead, so what the flub do we do next? Of course, this is also the time where the WWF had to become the WWE, and Steve Austin one day didn't turn up for work. It was just a totally wild time, although there are some proper classic moments in there as well, although you do kind of have to search for them. To catch you up or introduce you to this year for the first time, my name is Simon Miller. I have no hair. Let's binge watch 2002. Number 10, Triple H's return. And the fact it could be one of the best WWE comebacks ever. Triple H had torn his quad off the bone in 2001, which is just a mad injury. And even when he told the medics this, they actually laughed at him because, there was no way that was right. Turned out he was, and yep, he was going to be out for months. On the 7th of January Raw, however, WWE was in Madison Square Garden, so yep, if we were going to mark his comeback as something huge we should aim for then, I tell you, it was pretty flippin' awesome. The whole creative team deserves praise for the build-up videos too, and actually it's what we should be doing with all talent all the time, including today. Seeing the game prepare for his return was a story within itself, and when we actually got to the moment, oh my gosh, fans were desperate to see him. Don't forget that when Hunter got taken out, he was the company's biggest heel too, but again, this was so well put together, nobody was gonna boo him. The struggle had been very real, and now boom, he was back. In terms of pops, nothing comes close to this in 2002, and yes, that includes the NWO. That was at No Way Out, and you can see this for yourself. Triple H wins hands down. Number 9, Hulk Hogan in the red and yellow. So we just brought up Hulk Hogan, and let's get to the topic people still have today. Should WWE have just brought Hulkamania back with all the red and yellow? I say hindsight is doing its thing here, because I still remember Vince McMahon spinning his chair around with the NWO logo on the other side. People were so excited, and then yes, it all went the wrong way. That No Way Out debut was so weird, as Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall pretended they were going to be nice guys, and no, nobody wanted to see that. We basically wanted a rerun of the peak of the New World Order to see it take place in WWE, and for whatever reason, Vince McMahon decided, nope, you're not going to get it. I do understand the logic here though, because even with the success of the black and white, Federation fans and WCW fans at their heart were simple creatures. They wanted that nostalgia pang, or the wrestling they deemed synonymous with their brand. It's actually why Hogan was rejected as the All-American babyface in World Championship Wrestling at first. Do not bring that WWF nonsense down here. Now this NWO went nowhere, so sure, getting to the good stuff quicker would have been an improvement, but once again I actually understand why we did it this way. Seeing Nash, Hall, and Hulk on WWE TV was genuinely exciting, until it wasn't, and yes, to pop to WrestleMania 18, half the fun was Hollywood Hogan slowly morphing into his old self, and besides, it just meant you got another massive pop when all of this was done. Ultimately, WWE just messed up a lot of this, especially the former Diesel and Razor Ramon. They sort of languished in nothingness. Doesn't make any sense. Ridiculous. Number 8, the rest of the NWO. So let's talk about all of this as well, because I do think it is important. From that initial announcement to that No Way Out pay-per-view, everybody was excited because finally, maybe, just maybe, we were going to do the invasion angle right. Just a shame that it actually happened after all that had gone down in 2001, but it got so whacked out and confused, even Shawn Michaels joined the group. It was essentially just one big surprise after another to try and garner interest. HBK wasn't wrestling yet either after leaving WrestleMania 14 to sort his back, and really the constant story here was, well, why don't we just put another dude in there? X-Pac, the Big Show of all people, even Booker T, he wasn't even part of the first version. The true summary of all of this is the Scott Hall-Steve Austin feud. On paper that should have been huge, but due to many things, including, yes, Hall's personal issues, it meant it was just there in the mid-card. It didn't work, and that is such a shame. The NWO were responsible for WCW climbing to the top of the industry in 1996, and the payoff was this absolutely bizarre interpretation. Basically comes down to what we've always heard. If Vince McMahon didn't create it, he will at least try to recreate it in his image. This is a mistake. Number 7, Raw Roulette was pretty good. It was actually January 2013 when WWE last used this gimmick, but if we are talking about the debut, that's right, it's 2002. It was essentially WCW's spin the wheel, make the deal idea, with some Las Vegas flair thrown in. The first one on the 7th of October threw out stipulations such as a steel cage and blindfold matches, matches, and also a bizarre showgirl bout as William Regal took on Goldust. Maybe don't do that one again. When we do get to that period of the year where WWE falls into the doldrums a little bit though, which is always going to happen given we do have so many shows in a year, yes, I do believe this would work. I wouldn't make it as dumb as it was back then because the fan base would just get mad, but it is first, and of course you get the whole, oh my gosh, surprise, we're gonna do this on Raw. It's just different and fits with sports entertainment nonsense, and that's always important no matter what era we're in. I liked it, and yes, you would have to update it for a modern audience, but I think WWE could do that. Whether they would or not is a different story. Number 6, the post-draft shows. Of course, another massive happening in 2002 was the first ever WWE draft as Vince McMahon tried to create his own competition. It meant some wrestlers would be exclusive to Raw and some to SmackDown, and the first ever draft was sold as this huge thing. It's gonna change the game forever. As it was the debut though, the programs that happened straight after this are super duper odd. Because you essentially go from these star-laden shows in 1999, 2000, and 2001 to, well, not having that. There's a plus because of course new arrivals were gonna get more TV time, but you had to adjust to that as a fan. In theory it sounded good, but a new recruit, for example, is not Stone Cold Steve Austin. You also see mid-card guys like Bubba Ray Dudley and Bradshaw all of a sudden being treated like big deals, and it's just so jarring because it happens so fast. If you jump from the January Raws to the March Raw, it actually feels like a different show because everything changes, but you. Also, it's why when Jinder Mahal all of a sudden became the WWE champion in more modern times, and the audience reacted like, well, we never would have done that in the past. Yes, we would have done. Now, of course, it was entirely the point because WWE felt like they needed a refresh, but that does not mean it's not totally nut. I watched all this so I can tell you it's totally nuts. Number 5, too many shock tactics. I talk about this way too much, so I will apologize, but it's only because when I do go back and watch retro content, it's obvious to see. WWE is super panicked after the Attitude Era magic goes away, and they don't know what to do. They then decide pushing the envelope is the answer, and please listen to me, my friends, it is not. Ever. Of course, one such storyline was Katie Vick Kane and Triple H talking about terrible things, and look, it sucks, it's bad, it's embarrassing. There's nothing good to take away from it, but I suppose at a push you could argue, well, at least it involved characters and angles. You expect that from wrestling, which means it's still not as bad as HLA. Now, if you don't know, that stands for Hot Lesbian Action, and yes, Eric Bischoff would walk to the ring, scream about women kissing, and then we'd watch that for a while. You may as well have just leaned into the camera and said, listen, teenage boys, we'd love you to watch. It really was just so gratuitous and lame because people can access pornography should they wish. You don't need to go and paste it all over wrestling. It was just so shameless and awful if you were watching when a non-fan walked in. How the flub are you going to explain this? It really should have been a time when we were building characters and more stories, but nope, just go out there and kiss. It's so bizarre, it was so stupid, and even if you ignored this, then you had to deal with necrophilia too? Man, WWE in 2002 may suck. Number 4, WWE Raw goes a bit bad WCW. So it's barely a sentence, but I do think it does tie in. Vince McMahon really didn't know how to book Raw in 2002, so he threw things at the wall, and yes, for the third time I'm going to mention Katie Vick. I don't think I'm over it. The Steve Austin and NWO feud is also bad, and everything with Ric Flair as the new general manager is all over the place. I mean, he's sort of a heel, he's sort of a face. It's totally mad. Scott Steiner's program with Triple H also never get to the heights that we wanted, and I suppose that's the issue. A lot of the stars at the top of the card were the same as those in WCW when they were going through a bad period, and that sort of left a horrible taste in people's mouths. I get why we had to use them because we did want to see them. I just don't think we hit the reset button hard enough. Now, it does not get as bad as no disqualification matches that end in disqualification, which WCW was doing in 2000, but it really is not a solid 12-month period at all. WWE really does not know what to do, and I think eventually said, well, why don't we do what the competition did? Which is a bit like a Professor Layton puzzle. Given that 2001 as well is seen as one of the best WWEs ever, but it's just a bit of a fall from grace, and that's mostly because it always was going to be. You can't ride that wave forever. Number 3, the end of the year episode. So we really get this anymore just because times have changed so much and because networks demand new fresh content. But the end of the year back in 2002, WWE would often run best of episodes, just a highlight package from what we'd done over the last 12 months. The crazy thing about the best of 2002, however, is that it's a really good damn show. You just get 2 hours of awesome matches and an Owen Hart tribute, and because this was during a time where pay-per-view was king, getting to see some of these on free TV was excellent. I mean, you get to see Kurt Angle versus Edge, the Mania Hogan and Rock match, and Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, which was an awesome fight. If you had been watching highlights throughout 2002 and hadn't seen the full things, this felt like a fantastic gift before Xmas. Now, yes, once again, you couldn't do it now mostly due to social media, but if you can throw yourself back 25 years or so, it was a great idea that sadly time killed. Time is always doing that. Ah well. Number 2, Steve Austin does not seem happy. Once again, this could just be information we know today tricking our brains, but Stone Cold does not seem best pleased throughout 2002. Of course, eventually he fell out with the company and didn't return, but before then, well, you can just see it building. Austin is treated anything but the star he is from January onwards, and maybe it's because he did go out there and turn down the Hulk Hogan match. He was the first guy WWE went to before The Rock stood in, and as Austin has talked about, he just didn't think he'd be able to gel with Hulk, so he didn't want to have a bad match. Unfortunately, that left the Rattlesnake in a really weird position, and, well, after he publicly spoke out about his creative, sheesh, does it get worse. Of course, the end was when he refused to lose to Brock Lesnar in the first round of the King of the Ring on Raw, but Austin's point always was, why the hell aren't we doing it on pay-per-view? That's where the money is. He was correct, but it was still a bad look, and as above, I don't think WWE was doing this to actually build Brock. I think they were sending a message to Austin. It is bad though, which is crazy, because without Stone Cold, you do not have the success that WWE was still riding the wave of, but just goes to show that all things come to an end. I think it's only fair to say as well that Steve Austin has said ever since then this was a massive mistake, and look, the fans hated it as well, especially because then the WWF became the WWE. It is a totally mad couple of months. Number 1, the pay-per-view match we never got. As soon as Shawn Michaels did leave the NWO, things became way better. He had that amazing street fight with Triple H at SummerSlam, and of course he won the world title for the last time during the first Elimination Chamber match. It was actually quite a nice surprising moment. He then wrestled Triple H again at Armageddon, but there is another fight during this period that we do not talk about enough, HBK versus RVD. It was on the 25th of November Raw, and as Michaels had just won the title, he took on Rob Van Dam, who was super popular at the time. It was also a dream match, and I think WWE had decided they did want to protect RVD, because it ended in a disqualification. They didn't want to pin him properly. Looking back now though, we really should have carried this on, or at the very least made a much bigger deal of it. Shawn versus Rob after the respective paths felt so exciting and unique. It also allowed you to start forgetting about the invasion angle, because this was the feeling we were looking for back then, and as ever, WWE never did anything else with it. It's a huge mistake, especially because the crowd was super into it. Unless I've forgotten something, I don't think they ever did do the return, and nothing ever happened on pay-per-view, but yeah, it's exactly the stuff that WWE should have been doing in 2002. Let's just come up with some new things. Instead, they did not. Know of anything else in 2002 that you think we should talk about? Then make sure you leave a comment below and start a chat. Before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. But also click the video on the screen to get even more videos about binge-watching wrestling years. And listen, if I am going to watch all of this, you may as well join me as well. Otherwise, I appreciate you joining me, my friends. Have a terrific day. Speak to you soon. SmackDown 2002, a very interesting time for WWE, because WCW was dead, and therefore Vince McMahon was going to create his own competition, turn SmackDown into its own brand thanks to the draft. It's also where we got Ruthless Aggression and John Cena pushing that noise, and don't forget who was booking this show, Paul Heyman. That was mad. The ECW guy helping WWE at writing level. How far we'd come. You also get Batista, Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar arriving in big fashion, but there's more, so let's watch it and see what was what. Number 10, the first episode of 2002 has 25 minutes of wrestling, which proves the Attitude Era hadn't totally gone away. It was madness and promos. This was the secret sauce in the early 2000s, and even though SmackDown was a 2-hour show at the time, on the 3rd of January, no match in the card actually goes longer than 5 minutes. Now, to be fair, it does include The Rock versus Booker T, Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle versus Edge and RVD, as well as The Undertaker versus The Big Show in a hardcore fight. So the card looked great, but we were just zooming through them. This goes on for a while until WWE got an influx of new talent, but the balance is way off at the start of 2002. I assume Vince McMahon truly believed fans weren't turning in to watch actual wrestling. It is sort of mad because it's clear the previous era had already peaked. What WWE really needed was something new, different approach if you will. Instead, Vince sort of hoped it would all double back round eventually. Small spoiler, it did not. Number 9, before the draft, it wasn't great. Maybe it wasn't the worst idea after all. Now the draft didn't go down until late March, so you do get a lot of SmackDown mixed in with Raw, but honestly, WWE does not seem to care at all. The Rock, Kurt Angle, The Undertaker and Chris Jericho helped massively, but the undercard was a bunch of nothing. I think WWE had just decided it didn't matter because we've got our stars. Otherwise, it was just mad matches like Scotty 2 Hotty and Albert versus Billy and Chuck, and fans could see what was going on there. You can call Albert the hip-hop hippo all you want, but it's not Rikishi and we're not going to accept it. Hardcore Holly versus Maven does have a good tough enough angle tied in, but they are given no time, so you can't do anything. And also, what kind of new fan is going to tune into that? You can just feel that the product does need new stars because it was the same thing over on Raw. The whole thing feels tired, which does make sense. Again, WWE have been flying for a good few years straight. You can't keep that going forever. In 2002, it crashes hard. Number 8, the OVW debuts. This goes back to the foursome from developmental that was soon going to take over WWE. Dave Bautista, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Randy Keith Orton. You should go and watch all of them debut on the main roster other than Big Dave, because for some reason he was cast as Deacon Bautista and helped Reverend Devon collect money from fans. You can see a picture of him on the screen right now. I have no idea what we were thinking. And in case you want to see it and get sad, it's on the 9th of May. A couple of weeks prior, Randy does face Hardcore Holly on the 25th of April SmackDown. This one is way better. Orton is full of youth and enthusiasm, and you can see that he instantly gets it. It's that smoothness, man. It's just always been there. Cena came after these two in June, but his arrival is way more famous. The Kurt Angle match is now part of history, even though it's sort of shrouded in controversy. You can see John Cena talking about this on YouTube. He thought it was weird that Kurt tried to blow him up rather than focus on trying to build a new star. He's right, by the way. Doing that is always ridiculous. Fans don't care. By the second half of the year, Brock is running wild, and good grief, we could all dream of having a debut like that. He is treated as a threat instantly, and he just wrecks proper superstars when the Hardy Boys are eaten alive. They may be dead. It really does show WWE can get behind young talent, which they rarely do now. Always feels like there's a hurdle, and I presume some of these ideas were just down on a piece of paper waiting to be executed. That means John Cena could have been the Deacon. Thankfully, Batista does move on from that character quite quickly, and look at it today. All four are legends in their own right. I mean, that's quite the class. Number 7, Rey Mysterio ruled. It is hilarious that at one point, WWE didn't know if they wanted Rey Mysterio. Goes back to this whole Land of the Giants thing, but screw that. Mysterio had changed the game years prior to this, and when you go through his career today, he could be the best ever. I mean, what hasn't he done? He finally gets his foot in the door in 2002, and man, it is just the best and exactly what the WWE needs. The mask is back onto after WCW had removed it, and go and watch his debut against Chavo Guerrero. It's the wake-up you need, and Chavo makes sure everybody gets it. He bumps his ass off because he knew Rey was the dude. This was the 25th of July as well, so between the new famous and famous old ones, SmackDown actually starts to feel exciting again. And of course, nobody in WWE was working like Mysterio in 2002. Let's steal RVD's catchphrase, one of a kind. Number 6, the SmackDown Six. And the fact that they are still great to watch. Nothing has changed here. If anything, you can see them opening the door for the style of wrestling that would be adapted years down the line. The 6 relates to Edge, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, and Chavo Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Kurt Angle, who found themselves on the blue brand and decided that in-ring quality was going to be their focus. They honestly do this week after week too. If the bell rings and they're on TV, they're gonna go nuts. If we are talking about the kind of match you expect to see on free TV too, this was as good as it gets, and really a lot of it is as good as what you see today. It's also how Mysterio proved he was able to stand on the shoulders of giants, and Edge also took advantage of this. By the end, he's totally increased his stock. Angle was Angle, so he was an all-timer almost instantly, and the Guerreros were next level, I tell you. I mean, look what Eddie would do soon after. They all start having tag matches soon, and that's even more crazy for WWE, because Vince McMahon notoriously hated tags, but these guys don't care. Look what we can do. It was all thanks to Paul Heyman in the sense he was booking SmackDown, and basically wanted to replicate what he used to do on ECW. Some of the same talent were part of that crew too, so they totally got it. The greatness is there, man. It's no wonder they all went on to do good things. Number 5, an all-timer. Unforgiven 2002, Edge versus Eddie Guerrero. People were pumped for all the reasons we just talked about, and it was good. I say that with a tinge of confusion, because maybe it didn't reach the heights that some people were expecting at the time. It was a bit unfair watching it back now, but that's how good they've both been. Fans wanted home runs. I'm not sure if that filtered through to Edge and Guerrero, but on the 26th of September SmackDown, they do it again, and good grief, this is excellent. The no DQ stipulation allows them to go even more bonkers, and go read about this. People, to this day, still say it's one of the best SmackDown matches ever, and I get that. I just think they understood that being on TV was the best way to get the message across that maybe they should get a push, and within a few years, both were going to be a world champion. So that wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a fluke at all. They totally earned it. Number 4, Brock Lesnar's early days. WWE has gone over the Brock Lesnar origin story more than Batman, but this is because they pitched him as a huge star early on. They continually sold the beast to the audience. When you do go back and watch it, it's amazing to see somebody new get pushed so hard, because you are under no illusion within about 5 minutes the WWE wants to turn this guy into a massive deal. Does, however, mean some of the finer points are missing, including what happened on the 5th of September. Because amazingly, WWE had the balls to book brand new Brock Lesnar versus brand new Randy Orton, and then 2 weeks later they do brand new Brock Lesnar versus brand new John Cena. Once again, these were the rookies, and they got thrown right into the center of things. Now, each of them only last about 5 minutes, but it's incredibly fun to see how they were here compared to their later careers. I mean, you can see they have all the tools, but of course they're still learning on the job. Should give hope to all of us. At this stage as well, Brock had been presented as a monster, so fans were into him. When it came to John and Randy, or dare I say it, the crowd is still figuring them out. That's a ludicrous thing to say now, but hey, we all gotta start somewhere. Number 3, Stephanie the General Manager. This one is up for debate, which when done in a nice way is actually the best part of wrestling. What do you think about this? Well, in 2002, Stephanie McMahon was often despised as the GM, whereas going back now, well, I tell ya, she actually does a decent job. Vince does come out and announces that she is now leading SmackDown on the 18th of July, and that is a position she held all the way until October 2003. So that is longer than both Paul Heyman and Kurt Angle who would follow her. Throughout the year, though, you can see her growing confidence to the point she becomes a babyface and actually just comes across better and better. The shrill voice isn't ideal, but that gets moved to one side as well as she finds her real voice. That's a stupid sentence. It also makes McMahon a fresh authority figure, as over on Raw, Eric Bischoff was just pure evil, and I guess throughout 2002 is when you see her becoming way more comfortable as a performer. It's far better than the Alliance position she had the year prior. So I get why this is overlooked, because at other times Stephanie would just steamroll baby faces. This shows she can do both sides. Works. Number 2, Hollywood Hogan. In 2003, Hulk Hogan fused with Vince McMahon and becomes Mr. America. It's not good and basically derails whatever momentum was left from his WrestleMania 18 coming out party. He really does go on a run too, as the return to the red and yellow is great, his tag team with Edge is oddly fun, and on the 8th of August SmackDown, Brock Lesnar beats him clean. And we needed that, it's massively important. Let's get this young pup over. Hogan is undisputed champ from April to May meant he was able to appear on both shows, but when he becomes a SmackDown dude just after, it works again. Fans love it, Hulk seems game to ensure other people get over. It does not feel like a smash and grab, and dare I say, it also feels like he's legitimately happy to be there. So you could say that there's not much to dislike about Hogan on the show throughout 2002, and if only the old issues hadn't reared their heads the following year. I mean, it really does become downhill, and despite the usual limitations, his matches are actually fine as well. Not that Undertaker world title switch, but let's mark that as the before times. What I'm trying to tell you is that if you are looking for the last bastion of Hogan joy in WWE before it really explodes, you go here, ticks the box. Number 1, the second half of 2002 is far superior. I suppose we've touched upon this and the need for new stars as 2002 begins, but there's another box tick for SmackDown as we get into the year. It actually becomes better than Raw. Monday nights soon become the exclusive home of Shock TV with the Katie Vick saga and HLA, if you know you know. Although SmackDown did host some of this too because they had the Billy and Chuck stuff, the end of that one is so short-sighted. Otherwise though, Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker have a proper death feud, you've got the SmackDown Six doing their thing, and the whole show just has an identity. Doesn't feel like we're trying to push the envelope, it feels like we're trying to make a good wrestling TV show with a roster who, well, I think took exception to Vince McMahon calling Raw the A show. They were going to change it all. I would say from July onwards, it is the best wrestling program on TV in 2002, and while that's sort of a niche, it was important. The post-WCW attempts have made a lot of us worry, and at least for a few months, it felt like WWE would be alright. Different video for a different day. Is there anything else from SmackDown in 2002 you want to talk about? Well, make sure you let us know in the comments below before you like the video, share the video, and damn it, subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to learn even more about wrestling from the past, but otherwise, my friends, have a terrific day. Talk to you soon.
Let us try a game. Close your eyes. Think of something from 2003 in WWE. I'll give you a second. And my guess will be you just drew a blank. It really is such an odd year, and I think a big reason for this is because for one reason or another, Vince McMahon decided to steer clear of some obvious huge matches. I would guess in some form or fashion the backstage political game was getting in the way. What else can we learn if you do sit down and binge watch WWE from decades ago? I'm Simon Miller, I've just done that, and I'm gonna tell you. Number 9, the stupid Chris Jericho Easter egg. So this one is a bit silly, but it does open your eyes instantly as to how much has changed in wrestling. During the first show of the year, WWE put on Chris Jericho and Christian versus RVD and Kane, and when it's time for announcer Jerry Lawler to describe all this, he says, you know what? That's going to be a dynamite main event. Cue laughter. Now, of course, AEW wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind all this time ago, but if you're a nerd like me, you will notice it, and the next step is for your brain to realize that not only is Jericho in AEW, but Christian is there, and to a smaller degree, so is RVD. Or at least that's as of me talking. Chris Jericho has likely by now gone back to WWE. Lawler is also sitting next to Jim Ross, who also went to All Elite Wrestling, and then there's Kane. I mean, he became a politician, but let's not talk about that. I only mention it because the equivalent would be getting to 2047 and seeing Wade Barrett in some promotion that is yet to exist as Bron Breakker headlines. I mean, that sounds ridiculous now, but that's what anybody would have said back in 2003 too. Chris Jericho ain't gonna go anywhere else. Well, let's double back around to this in a couple of decades. Number 8, the weird coming together of eras. 2nd of June, Monday Night Raw, Evolution faced Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels and the Hurricane, and if that hasn't already made your eyebrow raise, it should start twitching now. It means Randy Orton and Shane Helms are duking it out with Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, and Kevin Nash. That does make sense when you think about it, but at first it really does feel like the coming together of two totally different generations. Triple H is there as well, but it kind of feels like he's always around. And do not forget Orton was being pitched as the guy in 2003. I always like to think the Hurricane was on that list too, and while the gimmick was great, it did kind of feel like it had a ceiling. He was very good mind. You even get the superhero posing with a Heartbreak Kid, and again, Michaels wrestled for years after this, so I don't really know why I was so surprised. I guess I just never had it in my head, especially them teaming together. So yeah, all kind of ties in. 2003 really was a strange old 12 months. Number 7, Scott Steiner doesn't work out. Or does he? Of course, I don't mean literally. Scott Steiner clearly goes to the gym. Now, overall, I actually think this is quite a shame because when people do think back to Scott Steiner's time in WWE, they get a sad face. And I get that. The dude was a huge deal in 2003. He most definitely should have been part of the invasion angle, but that's a whole different video. But to be fair, if you do go back and watch it today, I don't think it's as bad as we remember, or maybe the discourse that it created after the fact. Now, it is ridiculous for me to say out loud, but I was so jacked, ironically, to see him and Triple H do a bodybuilder pose down. Everybody in the stands loves this guy. Big Papa Pump was getting pops all over the place, and his promo work was as unhinged as ever, but it did allow him to stand out. You just eventually do get to those matches at the Royal Rumble and No Way Out, and they're all just a bit meh. And they're not awful. Scott is just struggling with a foot injury, and it does kind of feel like Steiner and Triple H, well, maybe they just don't like each other. He did not flop as a superstar attraction, however. Once again, people were desperate to see him, and early on in the year, I think he's actually the most popular dude on the roster. WWE most definitely needed that in 2003, and the debut itself is flippin' awesome. It just runs out of steam so fast, although there are a lot of different attributes to blame. A lot of people point the finger at Scott. I think that's true. Number 6, the unmasking of Kane. Some will say this was needed. Live and in person in 2003, sure, I get it. Kane definitely needed a creative shake-up, but in hindsight, I think we should have just taken him off TV for a while, or essentially pull an Undertaker. This wasn't on the cards though, so yeah, we did what wrestling always does because it removed the mask from the mask guy. I mean, don't forget the Dead Man version of The Undertaker returned a year after this, which was done for the exact same reason. How do we freshen these characters up? And we've basically done everything else. I think the real problem was that 2002 had seen the Big Red Machine dragged through the mud because he had to be in that Katie Vick story, and that essentially ended everything that the old persona was. I mean, we had humanized him and basically made him a joke. Why bother keeping the mask on? We've already admitted the original backstory was a lie. I mean, there are no burns. Without those constraints, though, WWE absolutely went to town. And a decade later, for example, we had Corporate Kane with a big old mug. It was ridiculous. Removing the so-called hood did make him feel like more of a freak, though, which was exactly the idea. So I still didn't like it, but sure, I understand. I mean, before this, WWE really had no idea what to do with him. Remember that time he used a voice box, and then he stopped using a voice box? Let's move on. Number 5, the co-general managers. Something fascinating about 2003 in general is the use of Steve Austin. He retired quietly at WrestleMania 19, but WWE were never going to ignore him. It was Stone Cold. He was still the biggest draw they had. Nobody could have had a proper plan, however, because somebody decided, well, he did used to have beef with former WCW head honcho Eric Bischoff, so why can't those two be co-general managers like we're trying to script some kind of sitcom? And they do have a ton of fun together, and you can see that they're enjoying themselves, and we certainly get some moments, but after a while it sort of becomes a way to fill TV time, and the constant teasing of a match just wasn't needed. That was never going to happen for all the reasons we just talked about. Also, it would just be Steve Austin versus Eric Bischoff. We'd seen that before. That's kind of just a gimmick. Now, Austin was great because without the pressure of wrestling, he can just be so over-the-top funny, but maybe the transition just happened too fast and it didn't really have an end goal. So I wouldn't call it bad, it's just jarring, because a lot of Raw in 2003 is them arguing as the wrestlers sort of stand around waiting to deal with the consequences. I suppose WWE was as blindsided as the rest of us because in January, nobody thought Austin was going to be done in ring in a couple of months. But yeah, could we have used Stone Cold Steve Austin a lot better than this? I do believe the answer is yes. Number 4, Goldberg actually does better than people say. Now, something must have gone wrong here, because between 2003 and 2004, Goldberg hated being in WWE, and WWE didn't really like him being there. They just did not see eye to eye at all. When you do go through the whole run, though, here's a couple of words to change the narrative. It was fine. Massive matches against The Rock and Triple H are given suitable hype, and he does go and win the World Heavyweight title. And sure, politics went to ruin that one, but he still gets there, which, dare I say it, is exactly what the fans wanted. I mean, making Bill do long WWE main events and selling wasn't smart, but even these aren't horrible. Before all of that too, Goldberg is squashing a bunch of dudes too. So, you know, they kind of did do it. Ultimately, it was when we did go too far, for example, making him wear a wig, and the obvious poor relationship which brings all this down. I tell you though, if you come up to me right now and say, Simon, do you think this run was better than Goldberg in WCW 2000? Absolutely I do. I mean, that one was genuinely horrendous, dare I say embarrassing. In fact, one idea they put out there, I won't even repeat on this video because it was so stupid. That's Vince Russo's problem. You know what, let's talk about it another time. Number 3, Raw does become WCW. And not that it's bad, but at the same time, some of the main players on Monday Night Raw are Eric Bischoff, Ric Flair, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, and Goldberg. So it basically becomes Nitro. SmackDown also has Hulk Hogan doing his thing, which means 2003 is more Invasion than the 2001 Invasion. Which is 2 + 2 = potato. The only difference is that nobody is waging war against WWE. And yes, you know the deal with all of that, it was rushed and silly. It was kind of inevitable because as WWE wanted to inject life into the product, they went with the old established stars as opposed to building fresh talent. However, because they'd never really been on WWE TV before, that kind of made them feel individual and unique. Or something. Now there's pros and cons to all of that, but go and watch the whole year now if you want to be a massive nerd. They are all over the thing. And by the end of 2003, you'll actually be a little bit mad. If only we had brought them in 2001, or, you know, just held off the invasion angle until we could pull the trigger. I will never understand why we had to do this in fast forward. Number 2, the ignored match. Now this will sound nuts at first, but I do believe at one point WWE clearly thought about doing Vince McMahon versus Kane. And then they just didn't. I mean, the Big Red Machine tombstoned wife Linda on the 21st of July Raw, and their following week actually had a stare down with the boss. Now, WWE rarely does that without a plan, and incredibly too, Vince was the babyface, and fans bought into all that. Wrestling's nuts. As I'm sure you remember, we then pivoted to Shane McMahon instead, who was going to defend his mother's honor, and eventually somebody had their testicles electrocuted. I'm sure some of you think I'm joking. I am not. Look at the screen. The way it kind of does go all down, though, suggests that Shane was one part of this, but Vince was definitely the other. McMahon was having a lot of big matches around this time too. He would face Brock Lesnar, Zach Gowen, The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, and his daughter Stephanie McMahon. Maybe that's why he didn't do it. He filled up his bump card. Shane and Kane was totally fine as well, all things considered. And also, that does rhyme, so maybe that's why WWE did it. You can't argue against a rhyme. Number 1, sadness. Because of the amount of teases WWE did do in 2003. It's sort of hilarious because in later years, the word was always that if Vince McMahon could not pay off a story on TV, he wasn't even going to suggest it. You go back a few decades, nope, not here at all. Because come the 12th of May, things start to really get tense between Bill Goldberg and Steve Austin, and surprise, surprise, fans thought this was the final coming together of the Attitude Era's biggest stars. They have a proper stare-off too, and you can feel the buzz in the room, but nope. I guess it was just done for TV ratings because nothing was coming. I would imagine the creative team just felt like they couldn't ignore it, because how do you have Bill and Stone Cold under the same roof and act like they wouldn't clash at some point? So I can understand it, but the fact we never got this fight properly, it just feels wrong, I tell you. This was the match. It also goes to show that 2003 was just trying to grab whatever they could, but if they could hint at something which could spark interest, well, they'd basically go and do it. There's more madness you can tie in as well, because when Paul Heyman and Austin did this on the Stone Cold podcast a decade later to pretend we were getting Steve Austin versus Brock Lesnar, Vince McMahon allegedly went nuts. That is not on the cards, so don't you dare act like it is. Well, they just copied you, Vince. So if you do need a life lesson, in short, never trust professional wrestling.
Recently, and you can find it on the channel right now, we went through SmackDown in 2002, and towards the end of the year, things were exciting. Felt like in-ring action was going to take over after the madness of the Attitude Era, and that felt like a smart call. We needed a 180, good TV matches with looking at you in the face. Then, for whatever reason, the controversy of Raw bled over to the Blue brand, and left us with many angles we were going to cry over for the rest of time. In short, Vince McMahon could not help himself. I have gone through this year though, so brace yourself, because here's what you're going to get on SmackDown throughout 2003. Number 12, we start with Al Wilson and Dawn Marie. Even though it was clear SmackDown was trying to underline itself as a show that would embrace the old ways of wrestling, Dawn Marie decided to marry Tori Wilson's dad to get one over her in a feud. I mean, that's insane. Al Wilson was Tori's real father too, and most of January in 2003 is just this. I mean, the 2nd of January episode features Al's and Dawn's wedding, bleeding, and by the 16th, Al was dead due to too much sex. And what the flap happened to Rey Mysterio and Edge being awesome. This was the road to the Royal Rumble as well, so if you tune back in for that, you got old people passing away from humping. My guess is a few new fans didn't want to watch that. It all comes down to the fact that my man thought controversy and scandal would generate headlines and get people talking, and maybe that happened, but it didn't get anybody wanting to watch, and that's the point. It's bad. Number 11, some of the comedy was a bit better, which is a huge thing to say for Vince McMahon's WWE. Sometimes he got it so wrong we cried inside, and most of this did improve thanks to the one and only Kurt Angle. He proved that if you were awesome in the ring when the bell goes, you can do whatever the flub you want on the outside of the squared circle, as long as you are entertaining. By July, Kurt is doing a rap segment as he feuds with John Cena, and while it does have Dad Drunk at Christmas vibes, that's exactly what he was going for. He knows the deal. You also get referee Brian Hebner beatboxing under duress, and Cena sells this like the world is coming to an end. It works. It may not come that way if you watch this out of context, but you need to know about the other attempts that were going on, like Los Guerreros spraying Big Show with sewage, or people getting the runs because they ate a dodgy burrito. Great. Kurt continually does it throughout the year, and this is why he is one of the GOATs. Of course, his wrestling is unmatched, but the fact he understood the character side so quickly too, the man is one of a kind. If you want to put him on your personal Mount Rushmore, I get it. Just go back and watch him. Fires on all cylinders. Number 10, The Undertaker feuds with the FBI. Now, I like the FBI. A bit of fun gimmick in ECW, so why not try it out on WWE TV? It's never meant to be anything more than mid-card entertainment. Then all of a sudden in 2003, they are feuding with The Undertaker. I think this sums up where the dead man was headed, because at WrestleMania 19, his match was also against A-Train and The Big Show. Just so weird and forgettable. And that, of course, was done to launch Nathan Jones into the stratosphere when the plug gets pulled, because management decided that Nathan wasn't ready. That didn't help Taker either. He was lost in the shuffle again. To fix this, WWE did indeed get Tommy Stamboli, Nunzio, and Chuck Palumbo to attack the Phenom, and they basically warred throughout the summer. We even got The Undertaker team with Brock Lesnar on the house shows to make it a 3-on-2. I mean, I would imagine the idea was for two big dudes to throw some people around. It was different on SmackDown as Taker was doing it by himself, and they don't have one match on pay-per-view. Those slots were reserved for John Cena and A-Train, so basically Biker Taker was fighting 5 individuals in total. This was so strange, and look, nobody brings it up today, because it was sort of just there. Number 9, the OG ring explosion. And how it is still flubbing awesome. WWE has shown the clip of Big Show and Brock Lesnar hitting the ring so hard it blew up. It may be the best thing ever. It was the 12th of June 2003 SmackDown when they tried to superplex, and yep, the hallowed square circle went boom, collapsed. What a good idea. WWE knew this too, as they did it again with Mark Henry in 2011 and Braun Strowman got a go in 2017, so fair play to the powers that be. Over time, they have not overdone this at all. Nothing will ever beat the first one though, because nobody saw it coming. Nobody thought a superplex would be able to cause a total collapse, and this is what I mean when I talk about creative finishes too. The odd run-in or distraction is fine, but you can think outside the box. This is that example. Michael Cole and Towns on commentary sold this moment wonderfully as well, and actually Lesnar and Show had some real chemistry together. I think Brock just understood how to get the Giants' bigness over. So it still rules in case you wanted to know, and if you've never seen it, change that today. You'll smile and remind yourself how stupid, yet brilliant, wrestling can be. Number 8, the hidden February classic. We have talked about this before, but I need to reiterate it in case you are new. I just cannot watch Chris Benoit matches anymore. I'm sure you can figure out why. And I know some fans go the other way, and that's fine. This is just my choice. That is not to say he and Kurt Angle didn't have amazing chemistry, because boy howdy they did. Anytime they clashed, you could see they loved working with each other. And in 2003, they are just having the time of their lives. I mean, you do have that match at the Royal Rumble, but then on the 6th of February SmackDown, they are back doing it on TV. It actually benefits from the fact it's only 10 minutes because there is no wasted motion. The bell rings and they just go ballistic. The transitions especially are like playing WWE 2K. I'm gonna be that guy, but they're effortless. You also get Los Guerreros versus Team Angle on this card, with Team Angle winning the belts. So really, this is like a pay-per-view edition of SmackDown. Just feels like both of these matches have been lost to the passage of time. So I think you should check them out today if you want to be a super nerd. They are worth your time. Number 7, the 60-minute Iron Man match. We were always so mad to watch SmackDowns in 2003 because WWE had figured it out. The Attitude Era was done and we needed something new. And when the Blue Brand went full-on wrestling, it's exactly the new approach the audience wanted. This Kurt Angle Brock Lesnar Iron Man match is all the proof you need. It is the 18th of September episode, and over half the show is dedicated to it, and both guys go crazy. They're not worried about commercial breaks. They were just gonna go till they can't go no more. It's even madder watching it back with all the facts, because Kurt later admitted his sister had passed away shortly before this, so he had stayed up the night before taking painkillers. He had told his sibling he wouldn't talk to her again until she got herself clean. This is how it ended, so yeah. Even though what Angle did was out of love, he was riddled with guilt. WWE actually couldn't get hold of Kurt due to him being passed out in his hotel room when he finally got to the building, and this is what he was able to do. So don't tell me he's not one of the best to ever do it. Most couldn't do this after weeks of perfect training. It's also the antithesis to what most people expect from an Iron Man 2 because there's not much downtime. They just use their ridiculous engines to go and go. It's definitely one of the best that WWE has ever done. It's flawless in many ways. Love it. Number 6, Roddy Piper with Shawn O'Haire. Does not work. You likely don't remember that pairing, and to be fair, it was super weird. In April though, WWE did want to push Shawn O'Haire, and yeah, that made sense. He had all the tools that seemed to be successful in WWE, and their big plan to make this work was to team him with Roddy Piper. Now we all know Roddy was a Hall of Famer, but he was also a loose cannon. Therefore, while this started alright in June, WWE eventually decided they couldn't handle Piper anymore, so they released him. That meant Shawn was in no man's land, and he got relegated to Velocity. That was not great for him. It was also when he was doing this weird motivational speaker with a twist gimmick, and go read some message boards about this today. The wider fan base are still into it, and yet it was totally wasted. I mean, you could argue that Roddy actually derailed O'Haire because he did all the talking, and before that, Shawn was getting better and better in that area. I'm not sure the audience bought it either, so in terms of a post-mortem, well, it was just never a net positive, and O'Haire never got to where he could have done. And just because you share your screen time with a legend doesn't mean it's all of a sudden going to click with ease. Dare I say WWE rushed this one. Could have been so much more. Number 5, Mr. America felt like bad WCW. So maybe that is a bit unfair, but when you write the idea down, it does sound like WCW in the year 2000 where everything was bad. I mean, you had no disqualification matches that ended in a DQ. Wrestlers also won bouts they weren't officially in. You had work shoots. It was rubbish. So when you hear, why don't we put Hulk Hogan in a mask and tell him to pretend he's not Hulk Hogan, even though quite clearly it's Hulk Hogan, well, even a kid is gonna go, what the f*** are you doing? On the first of May SmackDown though, Mr. America did debut on an episode of Piper's Pit, and we had weeks of vignette for this character. We treated it like a huge deal, so actually, we trolled the audience. It was all off the back of Vince McMahon firing Hogan after that match at WrestleMania 19. They then booked Mr. America versus Roddy Piper at Judgment Day. Let's just say that was a mistake. I mean, the real problem was heels looked so stupid trying to rip his mask off because there was no surprise here. I still don't know if we were meant to just suspend our disbelief and act like the bad guys weren't smart enough to realize this, or if they were on the same page as us and they were just getting mad. You know what? It just sucks. We never even got a payoff because Hogan and McMahon fell out soon after this. What a waste of time. Number 4, Brock and Vince. And speaking of a waste of time, let us get into the short-lived relationship between Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon. I'm sure you're rolling your eyes because no way that happened. Well, I'm here to ruin your day and tell you it did. It was classic swerve for swerve booking because on the 7th of August edition of SmackDown, we got a steel cage match between McMahon and Brock. Kurt Angle was the referee, and of course Lesnar attacked him. He was secretly in cahoots with Vince. I mean, don't ask why. WWE just wanted to make some noise. Now, I suppose this could have worked because one thing Lesnar did need was a mouthpiece. McMahon knew how to do that. And then, nothing. It soon became obvious it was an idea to make Brock a heel again, and that was it. There was no plan to actually have them together for a prolonged period. It sort of triggered the end of days too, because come WrestleMania 20, which wasn't that long after, Brock was gone. You know the story. Lesnar decided he didn't like wrestling's travel schedule, so he wasn't going to do it anymore. Believe you me, the backstage rage was real. It's why throwing in the McMahon stuff makes it more interesting, because all this happens within 2 years, and it still ends badly. Sometimes you just got to accept wrestling is bonkers. Number 3, the weirdest main event ever. So if you remember this, I am going to send you a cookie. Probably going to be off by the time it gets to you, but still. Have a guess what did headline the 14th of August 2003 SmackDown though? If you have just shouted out A-Train versus Stephanie McMahon, well, you watch too much wrestling because you are remembering the strangest matches. The story was horrendous too, as McMahon had put his daughter in this as a way to punish her for defying his orders. It eventually led to their no-holds-barred match at No Mercy 2003, and honestly, do not watch that. Vince versus Steph. It's so violent in the oddest way possible, it may put you off for life. Turned out Steph was just a main event machine this year because you also teamed with Zach Gowen to take on the Big Show on the 3rd of July show too. You can say at least it was different, but again, there was something uncomfortable about this. You can go and see it for yourself. There's also a moment in that A-Train match where they both look at the hard cam before Albert hits his finish, and it's like they're both thinking, how the hell did we get here? They weren't alone. We were thinking that too. Number 2, it's a good show. Now that sounds somewhat redundant to say, but it's true. Some people rightfully think the post-Attitude Era shows are bad, and you're right. There's Katie Vick, never forget. But if you just slam your way through SmackDown, I think it's different. There's so many good things that you can take away from it. The obvious names like Lesnar, Cena, and Eddie Guerrero doing his thing elevate the entire program, and it's as it once was. SmackDown is so superior to Raw, you can sit there and binge the blue brand, whereas Monday nights were going to make you cry and shout, please stop doing this. You could even get some nostalgia because WWE does do the Hogan-McMahon feud, which is ridiculous, but sometimes star power is the name of the game. That had also been brewing for years, but then, if you're not into that, you get the modern stylings of the SmackDown Six, so yeah, something for everyone. I also suppose if you wanted WWE soap opera craziness, you get the Al Wilson stuff too. I personally would not agree with that. The rest of it does even out though, and ultimately when you get to the end of 2003, SmackDown is a good TV show. It's just a shame it wasn't gonna last. Number 1, the arrival of fake noise. So maybe WWE did this before, but watching throughout 2003, it becomes very obvious that fake crowd noise has been introduced as an idea live. And of course, WWF was super fond of doing this retroactively. If you can find the 1992 Royal Rumble on VHS, you'll be surprised to see that Sid Justice gets booed after he eliminates Hulk Hogan. But if you then go and watch the live version, well damn it, Sid gets cheered. After the heady noise heights of the Attitude Era, however, I just think management was desperate for loud reactions, so when it didn't happen to the same level, they just decided flub it, we'll pipe it in. Now surely they can't have trialed this because it is so obvious. I mean, sometimes the pitch is different to the actual fans in the arena. Surprise, surprise, it may just be a little bit more obvious when Vince and Stephanie are doing their segments, and look, it does not sound real. That's the problem. If it blended in, fine, but it doesn't. Why WWE decided to change tact, I do not know, but I bet you notice it. It's borderline ridiculous. It actually would have been better too to have sat fake people in the audience and told them to make the relevant noise. Whatever reason, we did not. Know of anything else that went down in SmackDown in 2003 that you would like to talk about? Well, you can drop it in the comments below. Before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to get even more wrestling knowledge in your life. But otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you. I will talk to you again soon. 2004 is such a mad WWE year to look back on because every day seemed to give us something different. I mean, the rise of Chris Benoit to the world title is now impossibly hard to look back on for obvious reasons, but it's also when Brock Lesnar decided he was going to leave the company. Those two are somewhat connected. It kind of opened the door for other superstars to step into the limelight. WWE was still obsessed with pushing the envelope, which resulted in some terrible TV too, and really it's just one big hangover from the Attitude Era. What do we do? Who do we push? And what direction are we heading in? There's a lot more we could take from 2004 as well, though. So hello, my friends. I have watched this a lot, and I am Simon Miller. Let's see where we were at. Number 10, the game-changing main event. So it's totally fair to say that the women's division in 2004 was not being treated in the right way. A lot of the stories for the females were terrible, which is why Trish Stratus and Lita main eventing Raw was absolutely massive. It was the 6th of December, so it just snuck in, and it is historic. It's mad WWE took forever to finally change this, but at least it was something. Trish and Lita went out there and put in the work. It's kind of funny to watch now because it's likely not of the level you'd expect from today, but that's the whole point. You need the OGs to walk so that those after can run. You have to figure that they were still fighting back against all this backstage too. Some women in 2004 were being told that they weren't allowed to punch each other. So to get on the main event of Raw, I mean, that is such a massive 180. You do have to watch it through the eyes of the time though, but still, no one else even came close to this, and that is why they are legends. They fought for what we have right now, and thank goodness they did. Some of the other choices that we made this year were utterly horrific. Number 9, the absolute bizarreness, the Bad Blood pay-per-view. Now look, this show is indeed main evented by Triple H and Shawn Michaels in a Hell in a Cell, so it's not all bad. And you also see Randy Orton versus Shelton Benjamin for the WWE IC Championship, which is a decent match. And the very strange Chris Jericho versus Tyson Tomko. 2004, WWE really wanted to push Tomko. Somehow La Resistance are even on this event, which goes to show you how old that it is. And in the pre-show, Batista defeated Maven. So you can kind of see all the pieces of the future coming together. What will really make your eyebrow raise, and we are going to talk about Eugene later, is that slap bang in the middle of this, locking in at 7 minutes and 38 seconds, is Eugene taking on and defeating Jonathan Coachman. That's right, the Jonathan Coachman who was on commentary. Just to give you an idea of how this was received, some people rated it a whopping 0 out of 10 stars, and after a few minutes, an unknown woman in a bikini walks to the ring, and she wants to give everybody some cookies. Jonathan is into this, and he says, "Oh, hi, Eugene, maybe you would like a sugary sweet," when, of course, this woman lures Eugene out of the ring, and Coachman slammed Eugene's head into a cookie tray. I'd love to be making this up. All of it did happen in 2004, and I saw it with my own eyes. Eventually, Lance Cade comes out to join in the shenanigans well, and yes, naturally, he's holding a stuffed animal, which had sentimental value to Eugene, so because Cade was a heel, he ripped up said animal. Cade and Coachman were then going to beat up Eugene, but of course, because they are the heels, eventually they ran into each other, which allowed Eugene to hit the rock bottom and people's elbow to get the 1, 2, 3. So I just kind of felt like it needed to be in this list. When you are binge watching and all of a sudden you get into a match like this, you kind of stare off into the distance and ask yourself, am I actually choosing to use this wonderful thing called life to its most beneficial? And the argument with this is probably no. It was one of the worst things I'd ever seen. But to be fair, it did make me go, well, I wonder what Dave Meltzer thought about it in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And he just didn't bother to rate it because he thought it was terrible. Kinda sums it up. Number 8, we didn't really use Shelton Benjamin properly. Anytime you mention this, people will refer to Shelton Benjamin's mic skills. For starters, they were more than fine, but it's also 2004, so you could say the same about one Brock Lesnar, but we went and put Paul Heyman with him. Not saying that Heyman should have been paired with Shelton, but there would have been other options. He was just such a great athlete and could do such amazing stuff in the ring that he was deserving of a proper push. Even when he left the tag team division, he continued to fly, and those matches against Triple H and Chris Jericho from 2004 absolutely ruled. One of those with Jericho happened on Cyber Sunday 2 when Shelton won the IC title after the fans voted for it, and that should have been enough to tell management, we better go and do something. Now, he did actually hold that belt for 244 days, so maybe it's fairer to say it's what didn't happen in 2005 that derailed him, but it also felt like the opportunity was there, and Vince McMahon didn't see it. I mean, it's his show, I suppose, but it does feel like a mistake. I mean, look at the 2025 world. Benjamin is kicking ass simply because match quality is of such importance. All we had to do was copy that 20 years ago, but we did not. I do want to point out, Shelton Benjamin has still had a great career. He has been busy essentially forever. If you want to go back to that 2004 period, don't you tell me we didn't kind of hold him back a little bit. Number 7, the difficulty with Eugene. The Eugene character is not good. You never do it today, which sums him up, but one thing is still true. In 2004, this gimmick got so over, it was crazy, and surely nobody expected it. The fact he was dubbed as Eric Bischoff's special nephew sort of summed it up, but be it the 17th of May Raw when The Rock saves him, or the 11th of October show where we pretended Eugene and William Regal had won the tag team titles, honestly, Eugene was getting mega pops all over the place. And once again, please, don't get me wrong, the motivations for this have to be questioned, but Nick Dinsmore, the man behind it, somehow made it work far beyond what anybody could have thought was possible. Seeing him interact with top stars like The Rock, Triple H, and the rest of Evolution is totally wild. It sort of feels like WWE should have switched this gimmick to give Dinsmore a proper opportunity to fly, because he's the guy that did it. Instead, sooner rather than later, it sort of cut his legs off from underneath him. 2004 was an absolutely mad time. Number 6, the worst of the worst. Kane lead to Matt Hardy storyline from 2004 is so bad, people have made countless videos on just that subject to try and figure out what the earth WWE was thinking. To start, it was self-explanatory. Goes back to what we always talk about, which is Vince McMahon thinking shock TV was the way to get better ratings. Issue with that is the bar continues to be raised when you get to stories like this. The implied notion that Lita was pregnant after Kane had forced himself on her. Aside from not being appropriate for wrestling, imagine watching this and somebody else walking in who wasn't a fan. It is utterly embarrassing. The real "what the hell are you doing" moment came a few months after, however. Once Matt Hardy picked up a knee injury and had to leave TV, Gene Snitsky somehow got involved and yes, he punted a baby. WWE then decided to try and make Kane the babyface in all of this because Lita suffered a miscarriage after Snitsky had knocked Kane into her. WWE actually wanted you to feel sympathy for the Big Red Machine, even though he had done one of the worst things that anybody can possibly do. I mean, it really is just beyond distasteful and has aged terribly. So when you go through 2004 and this keeps popping up, man, you just want to turn it off. Remember, wrestling is meant to be a distraction from life. This was anything but. Number 5, the Raw Diva Search. And we had put this one back to back for the same reason. It is exactly the same mentality. Surely people would tune in for disturbing stories, and everybody else will be super excited for sexy women in lingerie. I tell you, man, the Attitude Era didn't actually die until WWE went PG. Because as much as Trish and Lita wanted to help push the women's division forward, actually it was kept rooted where it was. On the 24th of May, in front of a briefcase filled with thousands of dollars, Vince McMahon announced the Divas Search to find the next big female star. The next steps would be a reality show based on Raw every single week. Man, these are not good. It was the second year in a row WWE had done this, so it wasn't a massive shock. But seeing the contestants tasked with challenges such as go and seduce the male wrestlers, and that's awful. And even the fan voting got called into question. Nobody believed this was actually legit. There's also the Diss the Divas segment on the August 30th Raw, which has to be seen to be believed. It got so obscene, half the thing has to be bleeped out. Christy Hemme won, but a lot of these women got hired anyway, so it is just a giant waste of time. And as always, just to underline, as as usual, you would never get away with it today. Number 4, there actually is a lot of good wrestling. After the Attitude Era had come to an end from a date perspective, there was actually one really decent change. If shenanigans had been the choice for many of Raw, all of a sudden we were at least going to try and get back some good in-ring action. I suppose it probably started when Paul Heyman took over on SmackDown years before this, but in amongst that madness, so many guys went out there and reminded you what the name of the game was. Chris Jericho and Christian have an awesome steel cage match in A before Jericho is back again in August, and he has an absolute banger with Edge. You should watch anything with Shelton Benjamin and Triple H too. As we've talked about, the Benjamin push may not have been sustained, but this is still really good. The game also bumps his ass off of William Regal off the back of the Eugene stuff, so if you do like some good wrestling, thank goodness you can find it. It's not all run-ins and disqualifications. You could even see Shawn Michaels smashing out TV bouts as if it's nothing. Always feels like when you look back on time, he reserved all his best performances for pay-per-view. It's not true. So this roster just deserves more credit, as I think they knew they had to get back to basics. I mean, I wouldn't go as far to call them mini classics, but there are some damn good fights you should care to see. Go out of your way to find them. Number 3, the use of Stone Cold. Given it had been a year since Steve Austin hung up his boots, most fans started to realize this wasn't being done for laughs. If Stone Cold was going to wrestle again, they wouldn't have eked it out this long. He really was too injured to continue. Now we know today Austin was struggling with this disconnect too, even though he was still involved on screen. On the 8th of March Raw, for example, he's reminding Brock Lesnar and Goldberg he's the special guest referee for their match at WrestleMania. But I don't know, man, he just seems a little bit checked out. He even stumbles over his words at one point, and that is something the Rattlesnake rarely did. I don't want to say he wasn't excited about this, but I do kind of think with Mania around the corner, it's probably a little sad that he couldn't compete. And I suppose it all comes down to the question of how Steve Austin should have been used. I get why WWE would want to feature him, he was still the guy, but maybe a shift to the next generation would have been more correct. It's a lose-lose, I guess. People did still want to see him. Of course, it's not as bad as the latter end of 2003, but then again, long after this, Austin was back refereeing that Jerry Lawler-Michael Cole match that you should never watch from WrestleMania. So it really was just a roller coaster for a good chunk of time, and you can kind of see it all popping through the cracks here. Number 2, the July Iron Man match. So I cannot watch Chris Benoit matches anymore. I always feel the need to get that out there, and you can figure out why. If you can still sit through them, more power to you, however. It's most definitely a personal decision. When going through Raw in 2004, though, you eventually get to the 26th of July show, where Benoit and Triple H do a 1-hour Iron Man match. It, of course, was continuing on the feud from WrestleMania 20, but many people still consider this one of the best Iron Man matches WWE has ever done on TV. So to get that on a free service was mad 20 years ago. The pay-per-view model was still so strong, so usually that's where you kept your heavy hitters. Triple H is also in full-on Mega Hill mode, so let's not forget there was a time where he was the best at this. And by 2004, fans were desperate for guys like Benoit to be given proper pushes. That's exactly what happened for a while anyway, and if you do go out there, you will find this match on a lot of best ever Raw matches lists. So you do have to mention it. In many ways, it does seem to be forgotten about, although you can understand that. And if not, just think about it for 1 second. Number 1, the Edge. So Edge returns to WWE in 2004, and it becomes obvious super quick that he needed a refresh. Even though he had been away, fans decided the character felt too similar to what we had done before, and this man gets booed. You can pick most Raws from after his comeback, and the audience just isn't having him, which is mad. Edge was one of the best talents WWE had at that time. Now, thankfully, the company doesn't ignore it either, which is pleasant, because by the end of the year, he is starting to embrace his heel ways. And of course, when we pulled the trigger in 2005, well, there was no looking back. It was great for Edge's career because he flew to the main event. But just go and find footage of the Intercontinental title reign from July to September. I suppose fans were just desperate for something new, so man, do they give it to Edge. This actually turned out for the best because the rated R superstar character he would go on to find was the perfect antithesis to many of the babyfaces WWE had. And thank goodness we did do that, because do you know what probably happened in 2025? All of this would have been ignored. You shut up, fans, we don't want to listen to you. It's just another telling reminder that most of the time you should go with the audience because they're telling you what they want to see, and 9 times out of 10 there's actually a reason for it. It is pretty cool to see it evolve in real time here as well, and my gosh, does Adam Copeland just embrace that. He probably wanted to be a bad guy because once again there was a massive hole for these, and before long he would be feuding with John Cena for the World Championship. So if you ever wanted to see the seeds planted for the rated R superstar, well, you probably got to start in 2004. No any other talking points that we should have got into from 2004, make sure you let me know in the comments below. Before you like the video, share the video, and damn it, subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen for another binge watch year to find out what was going down in WWE, but otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you joining me. Talk to you again very soon.
2004 could be described as the year of John Cena. He had gone from almost fired in 2002 to becoming the man 2 years later, and yes, as Cena has said, a huge reason for this was Brock Lesnar decided to leave the company. We had some holes to fill. You also get the return of the dead man, and in many ways a very significant line being drawn between Raw and SmackDown. You want to talk about the B show? Well, I think Vince McMahon certainly made that call. So what can we learn from all the Blue Brand shows in 2004? I'm Simon Miller. Let's find out. Number 9, the risk of all risks. November 4th, SmackDown. WWE was doing their on-the-show Tough Enough segments and basically bullying potential new recruits to see how they'd handle themselves. One of these has become super famous because it was when Kurt Angle challenged any of the contestants to get in the ring and basically scrap with him for real. Now WWE thought they'd foolproof this as the Tough Enough guys had been run ragged, or they'd been blown up so much, how could they possibly ever compete with Olympic gold medalist, even if Kurt Angle at the time was a little bit beaten up. Sadly for him, it was MMA-trained Daniel Puder who accepted this war, and man, he decided to go all in. I assume Kurt was never planning to go 100%, so Puder took advantage of that, and he actually got Angle in the Kimura lock. If he had sunk that in properly, who knows where we'd be, and Kurt had to think fast. He sort of rolled Daniel onto his shoulders in the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up, as the referee thought, you know what, I'm going to do a quick 1, 2, 3. This was a panic situation to save a lot of blushes, and Angle erupted afterwards too. He felt like this rookie had gone into business for himself. The real silliness was WWE even thinking they should do this. You're a predetermined product, damn it. Don't leave things to chance. Like all of us all of a sudden forgot that Brawl for All mess. It really would have been bad for Angle too because he was a legit shooter. And the novices were presented exactly as that. Novices. I'm sure we would have figured it out, but let's just agree Kurt getting the pin was far better than the alternative, at least for Daniel Puder. Number 8, the Eddie Forgotten Frog Splash. Today when somebody does something crazy, it's often criticized because the business moves on so fast it doesn't mean anything. We all stop talking about it. Well actually, that's nothing new, because wrestlers were falling foul to this back in 2004. It was a great year for Eddie Guerrero because he broke out as one of WWE's biggest stars, and his title win at No Way Out against Brock Lesnar is all time. If you want to feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum, it's right here. Eddie's first port of call was to turn the newly dubbed JBL into a mega heel though, so as a true professional he got right on that. Some of their matches were absolute bloodbaths you wouldn't believe today, but on the 15th of July, WWE wanted them to end their feud, so booked them in a cage match on SmackDown. I just feel like this isn't remembered enough anyway, but towards the end, Guerrero does climb up to the top, and yep, he ruins Bradshaw with a splash of the frogs. You can see Eddie takes that bump hard as well. It could be selling, but good grief, he looks in pain. Kurt Angle would interfere to help JBL win, and maybe that's why we don't speak of this bump enough. It's not as bonkers as, say, a Mick Foley, but it is still a huge high-risk move that can always go wrong. So basically, this one deserves more praise, and that's why I'm here. Make sure you throw it in as and when insane bumps get brought up. Number 7, the other Eddie matches. Honestly, Guerrero was so good throughout the 2004 period, and I suppose in hindsight was the peak of his WWE career. Right after No Way Out as the WWE champion, he wrestled nephew Chavo, and quite clearly given their bond, they knew the deal. We need Eddie to feel like a beast, and they wrestled their asses off. It's like watching WCW from 1997. Kurt Angle was a special guest referee because him and Guerrero were at odds, and yep, it's the forgotten match between these two that we also need to give more love. On the 2nd of September, they have a 2 out of 3 falls bout, and it's so good. And I understand why we talk about Kurt versus Eddie from WrestleMania 20, but this one is also worthy of your eyes. They almost go 30 minutes before Angle wins 2-1, and I tell you, so many people don't even know this exists because it's another one that rarely gets talked about. It's basically a ghost. So let's change that. Check out both today. You will not be disappointed. Number 6, the draft. So we hinted at this during the intro, and yes, for whatever reason, Vince McMahon went big on Raw and sort of sold SmackDown off as a joke. This is mostly due to the now long-shared skit of Triple H being moved to the Blue Brand, reacting like he was offended, before coming back to Raw before the evening was done. So yes, it was a troll. No disrespect to the following list either, but they just weren't major stars because WWE didn't treat them that way. Therefore, having Rene Dupree, Mark Jindrak, and Spike Dudley as your big shift to SmackDown didn't work. The audience hadn't been programmed to care. Rob Van Dam and the Dudleys were way better, but they still weren't Triple H levels, and the whole draft had been centered around a game. You can also see it on the show itself too. The wrestlers busted their asses, but the creator was always more focused on what was happening on Mondays. Wrestlers would fall out about this backstage too. Talked about it a lot. Number 5, the 14th of October Brawl. You will never recall this match just from the date. JBL was still the WWE champion, and he took on Hardcore Holly. The world title was on the line too for some reason. I think mostly as this was recorded in Manchester, WWE wanted to give something to the UK crowd. It also could be why they beat the skin off each other, because good grief. You'd think it was their last ever match, they're so stiff, and even the punches, they just hit each other. Why not, I suppose? If you need a comparison, think back to what Bradshaw did with Finlay at WrestleMania 24. It's war. You gotta give it to JBL because he sells this like he's in real trouble, which is the art of a good heel. And it could be Holly's best ever WWE appearance too. And even Bradshaw lackey Orlando Jordan at ringside works. Of course, he takes some shots. It's a fight. The chair shot to hardcore is most definitely not cool today, but it's a different world back then, and allowed JBL to win in controversial fashion. Still, if you're looking for a surprise find, you just found it. Number 4, John Cena earned his spot. I mean, it is really obvious. It's not like management just changed their mind and pushed John Cena. The man is just improving constantly throughout 2004, and he ain't even Super Cena yet. He's a dude fighting for his position, hence why the fans love him. They can feel it. At WrestleMania 20, he does win the US title from the Big Show as well, so the audience could believe, and before long, he's basically the focal point of SmackDown. Thank goodness for that as well, because man, they needed it. John does feud with Rene Dupree, which you don't need to go back to, but his best of 5 series with Booker T is actually very good. Felt like both guys needed each other, and you get that shock title loss to Carlito in October, which happens on TV, meant it just keeps you guessing. Sadly, yes, that did then lead to that stabbing angle courtesy of Jesus, but in 2004, WWE was still obsessed with pushing this envelope, and before long, you can smell it in the air. John Cena is on the path to the top, his confidence grows too, starts taking some chances. The true flinging to the top of the card is when he did move to Raw in 2005, but 2004 is also his year. Without him, the blue brand would have been painfully thin. Number 3, Kenzo Suzuki. Now we don't need anything else in that title other than his name, because that sums it up. Kenzo Suzuki? I have no idea what WWE was thinking or what they wanted to do, but it could have started terribly as WWE did pitch this horrendously offensive gimmick that you can read about, but even that was canned at the last minute. I mean, when Vince McMahon knows it's bad. The issue there is they had no plan B for Suzuki, so he debuts on SmackDown and does nothing. Less than nothing. He randomly gets put with Bully Gunn for no reason, and then he was tagging with Rene Dupree. Why? Don't know. He just wasn't right for WWE style, and they were never going to let him be how he was in Japan, because they got their playbook. Now, I do appreciate the creative team expanding the roster and keeping it fresh, but you have to have an idea. Can't just roll people into the ring, and nobody could have survived this either. If he had been taken off the show, I don't think anybody would have noticed. I don't get it at all. Number 2, the Dead Biker Man. You really do have to give it to The Undertaker when it comes to gimmicks, because when he made his transition to the biker version, there were actually elements of the Dead Man when he did flip back, so he did it in reverse. Because at WrestleMania 20, he went full on Phenom as he took on Brother Kane, and man, I tell you, that was awesome. The teasing, the hints, the fans were excited. We timed this exactly right. However, on the 18th of March SmackDown, he was actually treading all of the boards, because even after dropping Paul Heyman with a tombstone, yes, he was still wearing the biker bandana. So sure, Paul Bearer was back by his side, but we weren't just forgetting the past. I think that's the best way to treat it, you merge it together. Heyman and Eddie sell that like magic too, so I suppose he has more power than we mortals realize. Or maybe it could be that the real-life Mark Calloway was still growing out his hair. It's one of the two. At the same time, The Undertaker would also wear the long trench coat when he was the biker and do the eye roll. So maybe there was always meant to be a wink and a nod. Number 1, the rise of JBL. And how impressive it is. On this same 18th of March show, Bradshaw and Farouk lose to Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty when going for the tag titles. Beforehand, general manager Paul Heyman threatened to fire Ron Simmons if they were unsuccessful, and of course Ron was mad. When Bradshaw then decided he wanted to stay on the show, Simmons was even more upset, so they did break up. That's a bit weird, especially because they had broken up before. By the 25th of March, Bradshaw had redesigned himself into JBL, and yes, went on about being a financial powerhouse in the world. It was quite jarring because clearly this was meant to get him to the top, and by May he was working with Eddie Guerrero for the WWE title. When you jump to June, he was the world champion, and while it took some time, you gotta be honest here, it did work. He was one of the best heels in the company at the time, so look at that turnaround. Bradshaw took the pin in that tag team loss a few months prior. Now he was at the tippity top. If I were to make a guess based on this, I don't think WWE actually planned it in, just took off like a bird. It's not like it started with a bang either, and instead JBL just figured it out and then he put the time in. He had that belt for ages too, which nobody did back then. So it just goes to show, you never know, and that rhymes, so it must be true. Know of anything about 2004 that you would like to talk about in the comments? Then make sure you do drop us a note down there before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. And also, if you'd like more knowledge about wrestling, click the video on the screen. Otherwise, my friends, thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you again soon.
So given what I have just watched on TV as I am talking to you, 2005 is actually quite topical. You'll have done it as well, I'm sure. But John Cena hung up his boots at the end of 2025, and the controversy aside, it was quite the event. It was the end of an era. And if you jump back 2 decades, you will see him becoming the guy in real time, gets moved to Raw, was about to be the main event, and there was no looking back. Edge was also simmering away, and WWE is actually quite patient with him, which was going to serve everybody. And you also have Batista becoming a megastar. So 2005 actually has hints that WWE is absolutely heading in a much needed new direction. However, at the same time, there is still a lot that will blow your brain. So yeah, I just saw a lot of Raw from 2005. Let's sit down and go through it. Number 12, the Edge Matt Hardy madness. Matt Hardy's April 2005 release broke the internet because we soon realized there was depth to this. It wasn't just that one of WWE's stars had been let go. It was all off the back of the Edge Lita affair, which was like seeing on-screen stories come to life. It caused such a fuss, fan support brought Matt back to the fold. It was wild. Nobody knew what a flub was happening. The heavy upside to this was that Hardy was now a mega babyface, and when he does return on the 11th of July Raw, it is all there. We even did that match at SummerSlam, but then it only went 5 minutes. Edge beat him as well, and listen, I was watching at the time. This left a lot of people feeling flat. Matt was clearly the good guy here, and he just got murked. You could feel the air leaving the room. Now, there was more to this, and we did get other matches too, but I believe the truth is staring you right in the face. Vince McMahon never planned to push Hardy at this level, so sort of pulled the rug out from beneath his feet. I always think that's ridiculous. While I'd rather Matt didn't have his heart broken, the upside was a surge in popularity, and he was already over. We could have used this better. He also really felt legitimate too because he started shouting about Ring of Honor, which was a super no-no at the time. I mean, don't forget this was 6 years before the plate bomb. It also kind of feels like Edge was going to rise up anyway, so yes, there should have been a very distinct ending to this with Hardy standing tall. And it's not like he hasn't gone on to have a Hall of Fame career anyway, but still, if you go and sit through it, I believe you will feel the same. Number 11, the Forgotten Romance. For the first few months of the year, WWE decided that Randy Orton and Stacy Keibler were going to be an on-screen item. We then got to the 21st March Raw, and guess what happens? That's right, Orton drops her with an RKO. Of course he did. It just felt so sudden and like it was happening mid-build. I mean, WWE knew that Randy was destined to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and because they wanted him to be the ultimate dickhead, they thought they could use Stacy to get this across. It does get a mad reaction too, but I think due to the fact WWE did this in fast forward, it's forgotten about today. Not sure anyone talks about the Randy Taker feud and then goes, haha, let's discuss the involvement of Stacy Keibler. I think it's mostly WWE just trying to get Orton back on track because his Evolution run had been cut short to try and make him a super young babyface champion. When that didn't work, it was makeup time, so yeah, Randy, go drop Keebs with an RKO. People will most definitely hate you for it. They did. Sort of felt like Stacy would have been used more after this as well, but it was the opposite. Orton found the dead man and they went all in. And listen, yes, it worked at the time, but today, I don't know, because again, something's been lost. It was done for a reaction. Number 10, the Randy Orton injury. We shall stick with Randy Orton too, because when he did return to Raw on May 16th, he took himself out of the draft because he had a shoulder injury. Vince McMahon then arrived and said, nope, hurt or not, you can be traded. And also, Randy, why do you look so thin? I mean, they even called him anorexic, which is ridiculous. For starters, the man was rehabbing and he shouldn't screw with people's brains, but I don't think Orton knew that was coming either. He looks totally dumbfounded, and he even said, bro, I can't lift at the moment due to this issue. Then both of them kind of stood around for a while and it got awkward. I think WWE may have been going for that sort of reaction too, because we zoomed right into Randy's perplexed face, and all this could explain why he was wearing an oversized suit. Maybe he was lured in here. And this era of WWE is so strange because there are so many quips about size. Now look, given the past and some of the things that the WWE had got involved in, well, maybe that wasn't the best idea. Number 9, the Eddie Guerrero tribute show. I'm not sure how anybody could get through this and not end up a mess. Eddie Guerrero's untimely passing was tragic anyway, but seeing his friends and family pay tribute on camera and just be totally broken by what happened is the worst. This Raw goes down on the 14th of November, and what you may not remember now is that this show is also packed with great matches, which actually was fitting. Kurt Angle versus Shelton Benjamin has a mentor-protege spin to it, and good grief, they go hard. Almost feels like a way for them to use their emotions in a somewhat positive way. You also get Rey Mysterio versus Shawn Michaels, which never happened before or again. That's two guys who changed the game for the industry, and it's as above. How Rey performs at this level after such news I do not know. Aside from the great in-ring action, it does hit pretty hard. It also feels like an important moment in time, even though it's not all that fun to revisit. I mean, it's sad, man. Really sad. Somehow it happened over 2 decades ago. Number 8, Shawn Michaels Part 2. So we just talked about the Heartbreak Kid, and yeah, the round 2 in his career that many thought we were never gonna get is awesome. I mean, people talk today and say Michaels' post-comeback is actually better before he had that back injury. Once again, that's super high praise. 2005 feels like a great year to use as evidence for that because he goes on one hell of a run. There's him versus Edge that goes down in a street fight versus Shelton Benjamin, and we all know what happened there. And an October match against Kurt Angle on Raw, well, we don't mention that enough. It's also the period where he oversold for Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam, but that's actually entertaining too, even if it is really unprofessional, but the rest of his work makes up for it. Kind of shows you that, yep, Michaels was a generational performer. There's also another forgotten gem that we will get to in just 1 second, but otherwise, HBK is at the top of his game in 2005. It's totally worth your time. Number 7, Hulk and HBK. So let's revisit this one specifically because a lot of 2005 is focused on it, because as the story goes, they got on fine until they didn't. Word has always been WWE wanted to do a trilogy of matches. When Hogan decided, nope, I'd rather not, I don't want to lose, hence why that SummerSlam match is so over the top. Michaels was letting it know what had happened wasn't cool. There's also some Mandela effect stuff going on here too, because before the feud, most remember that Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan joined forces to become a tag team, and that lasted quite a while. That part's not true. They only had 3 television matches. Because they beat Muhammad Ali and Daivari at Backlash, teamed with John Cena versus Chris Jericho, Christian and Tyson Tomko on the 27th of June Raw, and then beat Carlito and Kurt Angle on the 4th of July episode. It was that last match which actually hinted that maybe WWE could have run with them as a duo, because they worked really well together. Fans were super into it, of course, and if WWE had eked it out, the turn could have come at the Royal Rumble, setting up a WrestleMania match. Maybe that would have exposed it a bit, and SummerSlam still was a big pay-per-view. Does kind of feel like we left energy in the tank though. Could also then move Michaels versus Vince McMahon to SummerSlam 2006, but at the same time we're also crying over spilt milk here. Again, maybe Shawn and Hulk had already butted heads, so we're happy to get this over and done with, but even if you do wrap it up in a nice neat little package anyway, it's actually way better than it had any right to be. Number 6, Austin versus McMahon 2. By 2005, WWE had tried to find a couple of people to basically redo Austin versus McMahon. It failed every single time. This isn't a huge shock. You just had one of the best feuds in history. You weren't going to top it anytime soon. WWE tried here again when John Cena jumped across the Raw and instantly fell out with head honcho Eric Bischoff because Eazy-E decided, I want to get that world title off Juan Cena. This one actually holds up okay though. I think the main reason is because 2 of the opponents picked for Cena were Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle. That instantly meant the matches were of a higher quality, so while Bischoff and Cena couldn't match what came before them, the payoffs were awesome. You also had this dynamic working because Cena was mega over and Bischoff was always good in this role. Did the same thing in WCW. He managed to get under the audience's skin, which helped John establish himself more. I mean, the battle lines were obvious. Even their eventual matchup is actually alright, and it's not like you're going to be talking about it for days afterwards, but authority figure versus champion is usually dire, and it is not here at all. Eric just understands he's got to have his ass beat and sell like a coward, so it works. It didn't change the business, but it took a model and proved it could be redone to a certain level. It's quite the surprise. Number 5, the first 3-hour Raw. And amazingly, this actually felt quite exciting at first. The idea of Raw being the same length as a pay-per-view was a fun one, and then yeah, a few years later it became the norm, and it was super hard work. Less is more is always better. The Raw Homecoming show on the USA Network on the 3rd of October did feel different though, and WWE sold it as something that you can't miss. This goes back to what we hinted at with Shawn Michaels, because to make sure we did have a marquee match to really underline it, we get HBK versus Angle in an Iron Man bout, and boy does this get forgotten about. I mean, they do clash a lot in 2005, but this is just 30 minutes of next level grappling, and you do actually get a Cena Bischoff encounter on this show. It's no disqualification, so as talked about, it works. There's also Edge versus Matt Hardy, who are scrapping over the Money in the Bank briefcase in a ladder match, and we've already talked about it. Do not forget what had happened between them this year. They get super heat. Given it's 2005, seeing legends such as Roddy Piper back on TV also felt fresh because we hadn't run that into the ground. And even more so because he does a segment with Mick Foley and that's unhinged. It just feels by the end of it that going back to the USA Network was the smartest decision WWE ever made, and it's a well put together Raw. If only we had kept that in mind down the line. Number 4, Raw in Japan. These days WWE loves taking Raw overseas, but that was not the MO back in 2005. Vince McMahon wanted to cater to American audiences first and foremost, and that time difference elsewhere could upset that. Then in February, WWE went to Japan and blew that idea up. The whole card is booked for the live audience too, which is why it starts with Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho in a submission match. Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels also features, plus you see William Regal and Tajiri win the tag titles. The whole thing is designed to tell Japanese fans, hey, yeah, you can watch more WWE should you choose. I mean, they would then be confused because WWE was not like this, but never mind. The World Heavyweight title is on the line too as Edge challenges Triple H, and it just feels nothing else like the rest of the year. And you even get Batista dropping Maven in about 30 seconds. You can tell it's different from the moment it kicks off, and even if it is mostly the wrestlers understanding what the fans want, they were still put in that position to begin with. The real kicker is that this was during a time where WWE was the only big brand in town, and audiences wanted something fresh, and this proved they could deliver it should they choose. Instead, they kind of went back to the same playbook right after that old classic. Number 3, the patience with Money in the Bank. These days, as we have seen a lot, WWE loves a super fast cash-in. You surprise the audience, you get a pop, let's just get it done. That was not the case in 2005. It helped that the concept was brand new, so the powers that be were still figuring things out, but yeah, after Edge won it at WrestleMania 21, we just hit pause. That was doubly interesting as the audience didn't exactly know how this thing worked. Does he declare it beforehand? Is it anything goes? It created genuine intrigue, and look at it this way. Edge won it on April 3rd, and he didn't cash it in until New Year Revolution in January 2006. I mean, that's some serious patience. Now, yes, as above, I'm sure they were working out the specifics, but they could have just sat down and decided a week after had they wished. We also talked about the October match with Matt Hardy when the briefcase was on the line. That tied in too. Wouldn't have been absolutely crazy if Hardy had won. There were no expectations at all. I also like to think that Vince McMahon knew a couple of the Edge pushes by this point had been derailed by bad booking, so let's not do it this time. As soon as he did use it at that pay-per-view, it just exploded as well. If we do count this as modern WWE, it's one of the best unique ideas they ever introduced. Number 2, ECW. The 23rd of May Raw sticks out as something important. Even though it'd been dead for years, WWE had brought ECW back from the One Night Stand pay-per-view, which annoyed Raw GM Eric Bischoff. Therefore, he was going to have a funeral for the promotion. That's really weird. Vince McMahon stopped that with the revelation he had helped fund ECW back in the day to help kill WCW. This is when Paul Heyman arrived to cut one of those promos, hype the pay-per-view, and throw in some truth bombs to suit, or truth how he saw it anyway. It also meant it was the 3 big promoters during the Attitude Era, and fair play to them. They sell this perfectly, and you do got to give it up to Eric. He understands that somebody has to be the fall guy, so he just gets torn to shreds here. But you should watch it today, it's really well done. Really, the whole year is Bischoff taking L's, be it here or the stuff with John Cena. And while I'm sure a lot of it is McMahon getting revenge, Eric doesn't play it that way, just gets on and does his job. Heyman is also great as he gets a decade worth of frustrations off his chest. A lot of this is basically real. I mean, you can even argue this is the true end for these 3 in the positions they were once in, because it was all out in the open after this. Number 1, the awful women's division. While Trish Stratus and Lita were doing amazing work to change the perception of women's wrestling in WWE in 2005, they basically had an impossible battle. Trish was also out with an injury for a good 4 months with nobody else to fly the flag. The Divas idea ran wild, and man does it get bad. The Divas search, which returned for a 3rd year, was just reductive TV, and while winner Ashley Mazzara had potential, she was given no time to train properly. Learning on Raw is not easy or fair. What really summed it up is WWE kept the women's title on Stratus regardless, mostly because they didn't really have any plans for it. Then there's also Vince's Devils, which was Tori Wilson, Candice, Michelle, and Victoria basically hanging out with McMahon, and actually, let's just leave it there. That is abysmal television. There's just no movement at all when it comes to the female roster and their matches, and if we were going to be honest, they're basically there as eye candy. Some of the stories they got put in were insane too. It is not great. Not anything else we should be talking about from 2005, then make sure you drop me a comment below before you like the video, share the video, and damn it, subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to get another year of binge watching, because if I have to watch it, you may do as well. Otherwise, my friends, appreciate you stopping by. I'll talk to you again soon.
2005, SmackDown. Batista was going to become the guy after defeating Triple H at WrestleMania and calling the Blue Brand his show. Big Dave put himself at the top of the tree. The end of the year is totally overshadowed by the passing of Eddie Guerrero, which nobody will ever forget. There was also a time when SmackDown was jumping around. It moved from Thursday to Fridays, and WWE didn't necessarily want that. They had fallen out with UPN due to a lot of controversial angles, so I just think they were trying to make good bedfellows. It is a mixed bag then, to say the least, so hello my friends, my name is Simon Miller, and in case you needed it, here's everything you will learn if you go full nerd and watch the whole thing. Number 10, the draft is way better. We've talked about how back in 2004 SmackDown got shafted in the draft. 2005 was way better for both brands. John Cena did go to Mondays to cement his place as the new top guy, whereas the Blue Brand got Chris Benoit, Randy Orton, and the mentioned Batista, so things were most definitely balanced. There are a few weeks where it is a little bit shaky because Cena goes to Raw in early June and Dave doesn't go the other way till the end of the month, but really you understand the niceness of it all when you do start watching each program. Orton and Batista especially felt like the injection of fresh faces SmackDown needed. I mean, WWE was clearly going to push them, so if you wanted to see them in action, well, you better tune in on Fridays. Number 9, Heidenreich. I am not really sure what else to say about Heidenreich other than his name, and he was a Vince McMahon pet project because he was a big dude and a former football player. The issue was, throughout 2005, I'm not sure that dude ever got to grips with wrestling, and look, WWE did try. To prove they could be right, Heidenreich was then put in a feud with The Undertaker, and, well, it didn't work. We then tried with Booker T, and it didn't work. When we turned the dude face, and no, it did not work. He also joined the Legion of Doom at this time too, and it didn't work. By January 2006, he was gone from the company, which sums it up. Even though he had been one of the guys to get a proper push the year prior, even McMahon decided to cut his losses. It wasn't going to click. What didn't help was some terrible creative, such as Heidenreich threatening to do criminal things to Michael Cole. Just look it up. If you did it today, the whole show would be canned. You do have to mention the man though, because he's all over SmackDown in 2005. I'm going to say it once more, it didn't work. Number 8, the confusion of Orlando Jordan. There was definitely a time where WWE was high on Orlando Jordan. On the 3rd of March SmackDown, he beats John Cena for the US title, and he defended that against our friend Heidenreich and Chris Benoit. I do believe this counts as a decent run. The last match with Benoit was at the Great American Bash, but by SummerSlam, who the flub knows what happened? Benoit gets another shot at this, and he destroys Orlando in 39 seconds. I mean, Jordan was part of JBL's cabinet stable, so he remained a regular figure, but then, yep, he left that too. It felt like a big singles push was coming, and it didn't. Well, not really. And by 2006, he was another guy that got shown the door. It did feel like he needed more time to get used to the main roster, or that he was brought up too early, but even then, the push was so stop-start it wasn't going to connect with fans properly. Not saying he was ever going to be a game changer, but seeing it in real time, it's so clear this isn't the way to do it. The audience doesn't know how they were meant to see this man, mostly because WWE didn't know either. That's a huge issue with SmackDown in 2005. It's kind of all over the place. Number 7, the awesome Marty Jannetty match. Let us clear something up. There is no Brockers breakup myth where one guy becomes the dude and the other one is lost to time. Marty Jannetty was pushed just as strong as Shawn Michaels, but his own personal issues got in the way. I mean, the amount of chances he was given. Even in 2005, the door was still open and it all turned into Kurt Angle's awesome feud with HBK. That WrestleMania 21 match is one of the best you could hope to see, and during the build, Marty Jannetty did return to not only team with Shawn, but to also fight Kurt on SmackDown. He was going to teach him a lesson. Now, some people thought Angle might just run over him, but nope. Because on the 17th of March SmackDown, Angle and Marty had such a good bout, you all of a sudden remembered why Jannetty was one half of a young tag team everybody raved about. It was so good WWE even wanted to hire Marty back. Well, yes, the same old problem struck again, and it didn't last long. It did work so well for the WrestleMania payoff, though, and if Jannetty had been able to stay balanced, he probably would have been with WWE forever. He was such a good worker, and he just got it. Such a shame that non-wrestling incidents kept him from showing that. Number 6, the first Friday show ruled. We saw a similar situation in early 2026. WWE took SmackDown back to 3 hours, so they had to deliver a major home run, and they did. Exactly the same in 2005 when the Blue brand moved days to Friday. It was the 9th of September and there were some poignant tie-ins. I mean, Hurricane Katrina had ravaged the USA, so WWE decided to air the first hour on WWE.com for free before the second was on UPN. And remember, this is likely why it was all hands on deck. It was also that night where Benoit whooped Orlando Jordan in 30 seconds. You get a great cage match between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, as well as a bull rope war between world champion Batista and JBL. I mean, this was pay-per-view stuff. There's also some low points like the new Legion of Doom versus Eminem, although Mercury and Morrison bust their ass, but it told you WWE was taking things seriously again. It's also rather bittersweet, because it did mark the last big stipulation match for Eddie Guerrero, and that happened so fast. Number 5, Eddie's last match. But as stated, it wasn't his last match. Guerrero's final bout was on the 11th of November SmackDown, where he faced Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy was actually taped on the 8th, but given Eddie was found passed away on the 13th, well, all of it is just terrifying. You will have a massive smile on your face as Guerrero does go full-eye, cheat and steal, but of course that melancholy now hangs above it all. It doesn't feel real that within a week he would be gone. It really is Eddie at his best though, effortlessly entertaining and a dude that just gets it. He had been a heel against Rey before all this, but he was so much fun nobody was actually booing him. There is something quite nice about that now, because the fans are with him every step of the way. It's still the biggest and worst part of 2005. I'm not sure that is ever going to change. It's been way over 20 years and fans rightfully still chant his name. Let's just face it, I'm not sure there's ever going to be another Eddie Guerrero. Number 4, the Palmer Cannon experiment. This was weird back in 2005, and it's even more strange now. Brian Malley-Hott was his real name, and look, he was a journeyman wrestler, so he knew what he was doing, but this really did come out of nowhere. I think it was meant to be a wink wink nudge nudge as well, because his initials were PC, and he was here to take control of SmackDown. If you do read into it too, this was WWE deciding to put all the storyline heat onto Teddy Long, who was the general manager, after the Muhammad Hassan madness, and because UPN had threatened to kick them off the air, well, Vince McMahon had gone, ha ha ha, I'm now going to create a character that I can take shots at, and you're going to be that character, and that character was Palmer Cannon. Or something. Not 100% sure what Palmer actually did though, aside from let the boogeyman run wild, and introduced the junior division, when he also brought back the tag team known as the Dicks. Well, isn't that just fantastic? It just never makes sense to blur the real and on-screen this way because most fans don't care. And if you need a modern comparison, I would compare it to Constable Corbin in 2019. Palmer was basically a scapegoat. Of course, it didn't last long because bad ideas during this period were just roasted within weeks. But it's just stupid today. What a waste of our life. Number 3, Muhammad Hassan being drafted to SmackDown's the end. The Muhammad Hassan idea was so bad, the Dark Side of the Ring guys made a whole episode about it. That sums it up. It also ruined the career of Mark Kapani, but he never worked in wrestling again. For some reason, the increase of the offensive and controversial does coincide when he jumped to SmackDown though, so I would assume Vince McMahon did this as a panic move. Let's try and get people talking about us, which they did, but good grief, it was for all the wrong reasons. The July 7th angle with The Undertaker remains one of the worst in history, and don't forget Hassan was gone by the Great American Bash because the network demanded this stopped yesterday. The Undertaker name is super important as well, because the word on the street was Muhammad was going to defeat the dead man, and maybe even go on to become the world champion. It's why WWE wanted so much heat on the guy in the first place. But yeah, look, this was totally the wrong way to go about it. Forgive my language, but it sucked. Number 2, Kurt Angle's final feud is not good. So let's make it clear that Kurt Angle himself has talked about this, and he is not proud of what he did do with Booker T and Sharmell, and nobody would be. You know how we always keep going back to the controversial? Well, this one was right up there. Because in 2005, Kurt was feuding with Booker and his wife Sharmell when he basically started to stalk Booker T's wife. At one point, he trapped her in a room and actually said, I want to have bestiality sex with you. You know what? I'm just going to leave it there because it makes me sad. He also kidnapped her and basically was portrayed as a creep throughout all of this. And so many people scratch their heads. What the hell are we doing with an Olympic gold medalist? Now, Angle was actually moved to Raw in the draft that June, so this did stop before he returned to SmackDown by January 2006, before he ended up in ECW until he actually left the company due to his personal issues. Thankfully, he managed to get a grip on things today, and he is living a super happy life. As we've already talked about, he's one of the GOATs. The reason this will make you sad on your Tootsie Toes, though, is because Kurt Angle is one of the best ever, so his last proper feud in WWE should not have been this. I mean, think of everything he had done since 1999. Nobody wanted to hear him say terrible things to people cowering in fear. They just wanted to watch him have badass wrestling matches and be an idiot when he wasn't doing that. And once again, this all comes from the horse's mouth. Kurt looks back on this and goes, man, why the flood did we have to do that? So yeah, if you are planning to watch SmackDown in 2005 and you get to this story, just skip it. It won't do you any good. Number 1, an Evolution spin-off feud was right there. So I would imagine that WWE did at least have a conversation about this, otherwise they totally missed it. But both Batista and Randy Orton, as we have talked about, do jump to SmackDown in this draft, and for some reason WWE decided to never book them as rivals. I mean, at least not rivals who would have a long-running series on pay-per-view. Instead, Batista went to war with JBL, whereas Orton was feuding with The Undertaker. Now, all of these are actually good, I'm not criticizing it, but given that they were both there and given that they were upcoming stars, and we had a world title on the line, they really should have been pushed together, and I tell you, you can find the internet from the time, everybody thought it was a certainty. Got even more crazy because in the second half of 2005, guess what one of the top matches on the house show tours were? That's right, it was Batista versus Randy Orton. These also went to no contest as well because a bunch of Raw wrestlers would run in to start a brawl, and that means that WWE did hold them in high regard and they were trying to protect them. Well, do you know where else that would have worked? Pay-per-view, as fans would have gone, oh my gosh, I don't know who's going to win. It really felt like one of the biggest rivalries the company could have done at the time, but for whatever reason they had other plans, and in many ways we had to wait till WrestleMania 30. It absolutely stands out like a sore thumb when you get to December though, because in November it feels like we are teasing this, then it just flies away, and you're left scratching your head, which doubly sucks if you're bald. Know of anything else from 2005 SmackDown that you want to talk about? Then please do leave us a comment below before you like the video, share the video, and damn it, subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen in order to get more information about wrestling in your life. But otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you. You are the best, and I will talk to you again soon.
From seriously ballsy heel turns to underrated matches you simply must not sleep on, to forgotten romances. I am Gareth, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 things you learn binge-watching every Raw from 2006. Number 10, this forgotten Trish Stratus romance. Remember this? Yeah, probably not. Trish Stratus started an on-screen romance with Carlito on the 26th of June 2006 Raw, when he saved her from an attack by Melina and Johnny Nitro. After that, the new couple briefly feuded with Edge and Lita, but their storyline fling ended when Trish retired at Unforgiven in September. It isn't something many people talk about now when reminiscing about Trish's career, is it? Years later, Carlito admitted to Chris Van Vliet that he didn't really like the on-screen romance, or think it was the right thing for his character at the time. If anything, Carly believed that he should have been kept separate from the Divas and presented as a more credible worker between the ropes who could get the job done on his own. WWE would get back to that, but they were intrigued by the thought of Stratus and Mr. Caribbean Cool smooching on episodes of Raw for a while. This was just the latest in a long line of romances that Trish had in front of the cameras. But it isn't one that fans discuss when touring back through her Hall of Fame runs with the promotion. Looking back, it is slightly strange that WWE thought this was the way to go with either worker. Stratus must have made it known behind the scenes that she planned to wind down her in-ring career, and Carlito was coming off a tag team run, then feud with Chris Masters. He needed something big and impactful, and it probably didn't help when he came lovesick for Trish instead. Score another for forgotten WWE couples, eh? Speaking of wrestling couples, what WWE wrestling couple do you think worked best on screen? Probably wasn't that one with Trish and Carlito, but there must be some out there, surely. Number 9, seeing Ric Flair in a TLC match is surreal. Typically, for an aging pro wrestler, Ric Flair was full of it when he told anyone who'd listen that he did not plan to wrestle upon rejoining the WWF in 2001. Now, in fairness, the Nature Boy hadn't exactly been full of confidence during the last stretch of his WCW stint, but nobody actually believed that he'd be a non-wrestling authority figure for good. Mere months later, Flair was brawling with Vince McMahon at the 2002 Royal Rumble pay-per-view, and he'd go on to work hundreds more matches for the rebranded WWE until 2008. In early 2006, Rick was keen to show that he still had it to match even the best workers in the biz. So he signed on for an unlikely TLC bout versus new WWE champion and ultra heel Edge on the 16th of January Raw. Yes, Ric Flair was in a tables, ladders and chairs match in 2006. What? WWE's announcers acknowledged that Flair was up against it and a fish out of water going in, but it's still so strange to see him in that kind of setting. There were no Jeff Hardy dives off the top of ladders for Rick, but he did take some daring bumps throughout the match, and it was obvious that Edge was loving every single second of the thing. Also, Charlotte Flair was ringside for this one too. A decade and change later, she'd be working in big gimmick matches herself on top WWE shows. Lord only knows what she was thinking when watching her then 56-year-old father putting his body through hell to just prove a point. Number 8, the 2006 draft was so unique. People were fully invested when the first draft/brand extension happened back in 2002. Raw and SmackDown would have distinctly different rosters, thus making it essential that fans tuned into both major shows if they wanted to see all of their favorites. Naturally, the company went back on their ironclad word about the rosters, but the idea still had merit. Further drafts happened in 2004 and 2005, and they were along much the same lines as the original. Then, for 2006, WWE decided to try something totally different. In lieu of Raw and SmackDown picking stars, they had Paul Heyman march out on the 29th of May 06 flagship and announce 2 picks who'd be tied to the new ECW brand that was set to kick off in June. What happened next was special and unique. Paul had a face-to-face with Mick Foley that expertly put over how much meaning ECW had to the wrestling industry, and how important the upcoming One Night Stand pay-per-view was to both. Verbal jabs were dished out, and then Heyman announced that Rob Van Dam and Kurt Angle would be his picks to move from Raw and SmackDown respectively. It was fantastic stuff, my friends. WWE returned to a more traditional draft format in 2007, so they stood out as a curiosity in the history of the concept. They'd never do anything of the like again. Imagine nowadays if Triple H announced that NXT would get to pick a couple of wrestlers from Raw and SmackDown, but those other shows would not get draft picks themselves. Sounds outlandish, but something similar happened back in 2006, folks. Number 7, a 20th of November ladder match is essential. Let me tell you, WWE fans were real happy to see Jeff Hardy return from TNA when he bounded back onto TV in August. Immediately, Jeff was thrust into the Intercontinental title mix against newbie star Johnny Nitro, and they had numerous matches on house shows and in front of the cameras before a memorable ladder match on the 20th of November 06 Raw. This ranked right up there with the pair's finest work. It was actually one of the best matches of the entire year on Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view, and that is high praise indeed. Think of the matches you had that year. Like The Undertaker versus Kurt Angle just springs to mind straight away from No Way Out, right? Most impressively, Hardy looked motivated to show that he could be a team player that the promotion could rely on for bigger and better things. His performances in 06 would stand him in good stead for a future main event push over on SmackDown. 2006 on Raw was akin to Jeff's version of Eddie Guerrero's 2002 reprise in the IC title hunt opposite Rob Van Dam. It built trust with management, and that was always going to be important. In that sense, Jeff and Eddie shared something in common, I guess. Live on the go-home episode of Raw before Survivor Series, Hardy and Nitro left it all hanging out. Not that way, never mind. Jeff's leg drop bump over the top of a ladder was as special as always, and peeps in attendance audibly reveled in the fact that they were getting to see Hardy do his daredevil act on WWE screens once more. It happened late in the year and fell on an episode right before the next big pay-per-view, but Hardy vs Nitro was a fine ladder war that more fans should definitely go and check out. After you finish with this video, of course. Number 6, Umaga's arrival and push was badass. Or Umanga, if you're William Regal. Do not adjust your screens, my friends, after seeing this image right here. That really was the hairstyle that Umaga rocked for his re-debut on Raw during the 3rd of April episode. That was a look. He was repackaged after some time away and returned to shake things up just 24 hours after WrestleMania 22. First impressions count, and Umaga made a good one by attacking Ric Flair. He'd go on to beat Flair in a feud. Then Umaga went on a winning streak that saw him destroy everyone from John Cena and Shawn Michaels to Triple H and Kane. WWE were blatantly prepping Umaga for a big push heading into 2007, and all of these victories reflected that. Do not sleep on his TKO win over Jeff Hardy on the 11th of December Raw as well. That was also killer. There was an air of danger about the ex-3-minute warning member which few others on the roster could match, really. Truthfully, Umaga was everything that WWE had wanted Rikishi to be when he turned heel in 2000. Shame they kept Big Keish in his thong then, eh? Umaga's debut, squashes, and mini-feuds with some of the biggest stars on Raw stood out from the crowd when binging episodes of the flagship from 06. He'd changed the hair following that April introduction, and WWE suddenly had a hot new heel on their hands who could work well with all comers. His post-WrestleMania repackaged job was the complete opposite of what happened to Matt Bloom in 2012. The less said about his misery as Lord Tensai, the better. Sorry, sir, but you know, it sucked. Now, before you go any further, smash that subscribe button below for even more of these fantastic WhatCulture Wrestling videos in your life. Number 5, Fake Kane is borderline hilarious looking back. There are so many moments from the 21st century alone that make people stop and ask, what were WWE thinking? Rehashing an old doppelganger gimmick that works so well for The Undertaker in 1994 ranks as one of the very worst. This time it was his kayfabe brother Kane who suffered the indignity of selling a Halloween costume version of himself. Luke Gallows debuted as the retro masked Kane on the 29th of May 2006 Raw. He attacked the unmasked real deal version, then even scored a win on pay-per-view when he beat Kane at Vengeance. Apparently unhappy with how things were going, WWE ditched the character 24 hours later on the episode of Raw directly after that pay-per-view. The whole ordeal was just so ill-advised. Obviously, people got what they were going for. A spectre of his nightmarish past returns to haunt him. But it didn't really work. To think Vince and his creative boffins thought that Gallows could get a longer run out of being fake Kane, and maybe even turn it into a full-time gig. Then they'd have 2 Kanes. It was never gonna fly, was it? The wig that Big LG had to wear was unconvincing. He didn't fill out the old Kane outfit nearly as well as Glenn Jacobs had between 1997 and 2000, and fans in arenas sat on their hands watching some cosplay artist chokeslam his way through the genuine article. It was all very weird. It's pretty funny now that anyone thought this would actually work. It'd be like someone going under the mask as Uncle Howdy for a feud with the Wyatt Six today. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody did back then. Number 4, McMahon vs. Michaels should have ended at Mania. Shawn Michaels beat Vince McMahon in a thumping no-holds-barred effort at WrestleMania 22. I remember, I had the DVD. But do you recall why their rivalry started? Well, that Mania match was the culmination of a story that stretched back to the turn of the year, when Vince promised to make HBK's life a living hell because he refused to revel in the Montreal screwjob of Bret Hart in 1997. Suppose every feud has to start somewhere, right? Shawn beating up McMahon and shutting his big mouth on the grandest stage should have been the end of it, but WWE had other plans. After WrestleMania, Vince bizarrely brought HBK's faith into things by booking Shane and himself versus Michaels and God at Backlash on the 30th of April. The build towards this was bogus. That PR stunt tag team match just didn't need to happen after the Mania win for HBK. Worse, both guys kept their issues going once Shawn reunited with Triple H as D-Generation X too. It was like they'd just run out of ideas and figured that Michaels versus McMahon should keep on going somehow, even though there was nothing really left for them to do as rivals. Each ensuing entry into the story played before diminishing returns weekly when binging Raw. Characters as strong and defined as Vince and HBK were always going to get a reaction from audiences, especially back then. But it became abundantly clear that these men had nothing more to say to one another as soon as the Mania match was behind them. But they kept on going anyway. Number 3, WWE's toilet humor was unhinged. If all else fails, then just dump fake crap on everybody for some laughs, eh? Why not? Vince booked a ton of toilet humor throughout his feud with DX in 2006. In amongst all of the pee and poop stuff, there were promos that hinged on how much Vince loved dicks, in reference to friendships with Dick Ebersol, Dick Cheney, etc. It was all sophomoric, but it was coming from 2 grown dudes, you know, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Then Vince, Shane, and the Spirit Squad had fake crap dumped over them in late June. The next week, those pesky degenerates did the farting gimmick with McMahon by tampering with his live promo on the 3rd of July episode. At one point, they even borrowed Bobby Heenan's brain scan machine to scribble "I love cocks" in a speech bubble next to Vince's mouth. Hilarious. Now, not everything was bad, of course. Some of the hijinks that DX got up to were good fun, really. But they leaned heavily on juvenile humor during the reunion, and that often took priority over, well, anything else. Promising acts like the Spirit Squad were pushed aside so that Hunter and Shawn could act like 14-year-old boys in high school. And much of the focus seemed to be on Vince as a hapless headmaster who couldn't keep them in line. D-Generation X versus Vince dominated far too much time on Raw over the summer. Again, as aforementioned, WWE likely should have just moved on to something else once HBK had soundly beaten McMahon at WrestleMania 22. But they didn't, so we got this silly stuff instead. Hooray! Number 2, the bright side to RVD's misfortune? Most wrestling fans watching at the time would generally agree that it sucked to see Rob Van Dam's main event push come to an end due to suspension. RVD had just become WWE champion by beating John Cena at One Night Stand in June when he was busted alongside Sabu and forced to sit on the sidelines. WWE took the belt from Rob following that suspension, and they had Edge win it on the 3rd of July episode of Raw. Rather incredibly, there was an upside. John Cena's feud with Edge started cooking and dominated much of the remainder of 2006 on Raw. That simply would not have happened, at least not to the extent it did, had Van Dam stuck around as champ. Cena and Edge's steel cage match on the 2nd of October episode is honestly must-see for multiple reasons. Firstly, it came hot on the heels of their inspired TLC bout at Unforgiven. Second, it led to the formation of Rated RKO. Edge asked Randy Orton to help him get rid of DX when they interfered in the cage bout with Cena on the night, you see. To summarize, it definitely blows that RVD didn't get to enjoy a lengthier reign with his WWE title. He really deserved that, didn't he? But fate intervened to give fans plenty of Edge versus Cena action instead. And the Rated R superstar turned out to be one of John's greatest rivals. They made magic together. So yeah, sucked to be Rob, but those Cena and Edge matches were good eating for fans in 06. And number 1, Mick Foley's heel turn was ballsy. Good lord, this was brave. Beloved legend Mick Foley had worked a vicious hardcore match versus Edge at WrestleMania 22 by the time his unlikely heel turn rolled around a short while later. Publicly, Mick said that he was impressed by the Rated R superstar's guts, ones he'd almost spilled. Finding common ground through pain, the pair joined forces on the 8th of May edition of Raw, then teamed with Lita to beat Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, and Beulah McGillicuddy at One Night Stand on the 11th of June. The build for that 6-person tag was largely done on Raw. Keep in mind that this was all pre-weekly TV show for the ECW brand, so Monday nights became the place to see everyone from Foley and Edge to Funk and Dreamer get ready for the latest Extreme tribute show on pay-per-view. The most shocking thing about all of this wasn't Funk wrestling again or even Beulah popping up. No, it was WWE successfully turning Mick heel for the first time since 1998. That was a daring move creatively, and it could have backfired on everybody heading into One Night Stand. Thankfully, Foley was good enough in the role to coax some boos from fans who'd been calling him God mere months before. What a Herculean effort from Michaels to make this reality so deep into his career. There's a reason he's a legend, my friends, one of the very best. Right, was there something that we've missed from Raw in 2006 that you feel deserves some attention? Let me know in the comments below, and also, if you like this video, check out the other ones we've done looking at things we learned from binge-watching WWE. Have a great day, see you soon. From utterly bizarre comebacks to forgotten Match of the Year candidates, I am Gareth, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 8 things you learn binge-watching every SmackDown from 2006. Number 8, the Eddies in Hell line was a disgrace. There was simply no need for this, no need for it at all. On the 3rd of February 2006 SmackDown, Randy Orton told Rey Mysterio the following: Eddie ain't in heaven, Eddie's down there in hell. That promo came a mere 82 days after Guerrero's death, and this was done to promote a match between Randy and Rey on a B-tier pay-per-view. Their No Way Out match was up next. Now listen, both Orton and Mysterio would likely point to Eddie's workhorse, wrestling-first mentality and say that he'd been cool with the line, but they couldn't possibly know that for sure, could they? The passage of time definitely matters when it comes to this sort of stuff. Being insensitive just a few months removed from someone's death just to promote a match? Nah, that's a bit too much if you ask me. WWE were looking for cheap heat here when they really shouldn't have been. They could have had Randy disrespect Rey's tributes to Eddie without the whole he's in hell shock value. Guerrero didn't die in some bogus wrestling angle. His wasn't an on-screen death that was there to be mocked or used as a plot device. A grieving widow, Vicky, and some children had just lost their husband and father for real. Who knows what they were thinking when they tuned in to see Rey pay homage to Eddie, and then this line spewed forth straight at them. With that horrible Eddie's in Hell line in mind, I want to know, what do you think is the most horrific WWE promo line that's ever been delivered? There's been some awful ones over the years, so yeah, let me know in the comments. Number 7, losing Randy Orton in April was a huge blow. Vicious and unnecessary promo lines aside, it is safe to say that Orton was rather valuable to SmackDown. He'd been one of the top names on on the brand since moving in the 2005 draft, but all of that changed shortly after WrestleMania 22. Randy was suspended in April for 60 days and then returned in June on Raw. He would prove to be a big miss for the rest of 2006 over on Fridays, that is for sure. WWE dropped the ball on a natural, lengthy rivalry with old Evolution stablemate Batista, but they badly needed someone like Randy to keep star power high on SmackDown generally. Poor Smackers looked every bit the B show when Vince McMahon was favoring Raw by making moves like this. Oh, SmackDown needs Randy Orton? Well, they can't have him. Apparently, the boss man believed that Randy had done enough seasoning away from flagship brand Raw. It was time to bring him back to the A show and go from there. The fact he hadn't even completed one full year on SmackDown did not mean a damn thing to McMahon. He was moving wrestlers around the board like chess pieces. But that didn't really do much to make the draft feel special. Surprise, surprise. From his April suspension onwards, Orton left a huge, gaping hole on the blue team that is very much noticeable when binging certain episodes. It might be why dudes like Tatanka were brought back in to go over top names like Booker T, and that is no joke, and that brings me nicely to number 6. Tatanka's comeback run was so random. The 1990s star initially returned on the 1st of August 2005 Raw as a one-off opponent for Eugene, but then signed a full-time contract later in the year and debuted on SmackDown in early 2006. The company's grand plan for Tatanka put him in one of the most random tag teams of all time, of course. His union with Matt Hardy was a trip, man. What a clash of generations that was. New generation meets attitude. Pretty much everyone expected Jeff to be Matt's partner, then out came Tatanka. Right. Vince McMahon must have been into it, because he rubber-stamped a win over none other than Booker T on the 3rd of March episode of SmackDown. Yes, the same year that Book made money out of manure with the Royal gimmick and had to feud with the Boogeyman, he was also staring at the lights for Tatanka. Wild. Notably, everyone's favourite mullet-sporting comeback artist also did the honours for The Miz early on in Miz's run in September 06, before his latest deal expired in 2007. Tatanka enjoyed the experience and spoke positively about it in interviews afterwards. It was probably way better than even he'd expected it to be. It's also so outrageous looking back though. Beating Booker T, wrestling a fresh-faced Miz, becoming a default member of Team Extreme? What was this madness? Imagine tuning into WWE for the first time in a few years, only to see Tatanka march onto screens as a replacement for Jeff freaking Hardy. My head would have fallen off. I think it did. But that wouldn't be the only bizarre decision made on SmackDown in 06. Tatanka's return run was random, yes, but number 5, not as random as Animal's repackaging. It's somewhat of a surprise that Animal didn't need to lay down alone in a darkened room after being tasked with dragging something worthwhile out of John Heidenreich in 2005. Their alliance as the new, but definitely not improved, Legion of Doom had been a farce. But WWE believed that Animal still had some worth as a star maker. So in 2006, they stripped away all of the LOD stuff and called him the Road Warrior. This was a nod to his original gimmick from the 1980s before linking up with Hawk and redefining what it meant to be a powerhouse duo. Initially, Animal teamed with Matt Hardy, I mean, who didn't? Then turned on him during the 3rd of March SmackDown. After that, he ditched the face paints, grabbed some leathers, and went all Sons of Anarchy pilot on everybody. I mean, if you'd told someone that Animal was just dressing up as an NPC from side-scrolling beat-em-ups of yesteryear like Final Fight, then, well, nobody would have blinked, to be honest. But for the record, even he wouldn't have stood a chance against Mike Hager. Animal was released in late June because things just were not working out. But his late career repackaged job remains one of the most curious things about this era when looking back. His hopes of snagging a push didn't even last that long. Animal was jobbing to Chris Benoit in 2 minutes by late March, then found himself lumped onto C-Show Velocity against guys like Paul Burchill. Remember him? What a seriously odd time to be a fan this was. WWE weren't looking forwards so much as backwards to ye olden times. Before you go any further, my friend, do not forget to smash that subscribe button for more of this wonderful WhatCulture wrestling stuff, baby. Number 4, giving SmackDown King of the Ring was inspired. Did you know the 2006 King of the Ring tournament was exclusive to SmackDown? The 8 men involved were Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, Matt Hardy, Booker T, Chris Benoit, Finlay, Bobby Lashley, and Mark Henry. Of note, Angle Angle vs. Randy, Hardy vs. Booker, and Benoit vs. Finlay were all worthwhile quarterfinals. Eventual winner Booker got a bye in the semis due to Kurt's injury, then beat Lashley in the final to take the crown. That coronation led to his memorable King Booker gimmick, and the rest is, well, history. Honestly, bringing King of the Ring back after a 4-year hiatus was welcome, and running it as a TV special that'd peak on pay-per-view at Judgment Day was an even better call. WWE got every beat of this bang on the money. The tourney gave several episodes of SmackDown a fun hook to keep them must-see. It also didn't hurt that the lineup for the 06 King's Sprint was strong. Realistically, any of these guys, barring maybe Finlay, could have ended up with the crown. King Randy could be a bit of an out-there nickname, right enough, but hey, I've seen weirder. It seemed like Booker T was destined to fail as he tried to get the royal gimmick over, but then something incredible happened. Book only went and made it work. He was so OTT that it somehow clicked with fans and became one of the best periods of his entire run. Absolutely nobody could have predicted that going in, especially once it became clear that Booker was going to put on that dodgy accent. Oh boy, that was a choice. Number 3, match of the year? Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker on the 3rd of March episode might have been SmackDown's best match all year in 2006. Together, the famous pair worked a rematch from their No Way Out classic that went almost half an hour before the disqualification finish. Now, the screwy ending might tarnish it for some people, but they'd already worked a clean finish on pay-per-view. This was just a fantastic World Heavyweight title bout. It was one of those occasions where fans can sit back afterwards and say the main event was everything it was hyped up to be going in. That doesn't happen 100% of the time, does it? The fact Angle vs. Taker happened on the same night that Tatanka beat Booker T, and Animal teamed with Matt Hardy vs. MNM made it even better. SmackDown was lawless back then, eh? Behind the curtain, Taker was finally taking Kurt seriously after not being chuffed about working with him in 2000. They had a duff encounter at Survivor Series that year, which is best known for Undertaker's awful ring attire, just look at it, and the way that he manhandled someone who'd already become WWF champion. Not a banner night for either man then, but they would make up for it around 5.5 years later. No Way Out was borderline greatest WWE matches ever territory, or there in thereabouts, but people who enjoyed it should not sleep on the SmackDown repeat. That was every bit as good, at least before the finish, if you don't like DQs. How on earth did they go from action like this to, well, what came next? Number 2, WWE outright repeated a 1993 feud. What came next was just foul. The Great Khali's debut attack on The Undertaker during the 7th of April SmackDown was reminiscent of Giant Gonzalez debuting at the 1993 Royal Rumble, and that is not meant as a compliment. Indeed, Khali's whole rivalry with the dead man conjured up memories from one of the worst periods of Taker's entire career. This was nightmare fuel for fans who'd already sat through events at WrestleMania and SummerSlam 93, and it can't have been fun for Undertaker either. He'd have been well within his rights to pin somebody down backstage who had influence and say, so I've gone from tearing the house down with Kurt effing Angle to working with another no-use, lumbering giant. What? Now, Taker didn't have to worry about getting a good match out of Khali. He did, however, have to worry about getting any sort of match at all out of the monster. Khali wasn't quite as limited as Gonzalez had been, but he wasn't far off it. Seeing him become Vince McMahon's shiny new toy on episodes of SmackDown in 2006 flat out sucked, folks. Fans in attendance knew it was on them to sell excitement when Khali marched down to the ring and took Taker out. But not many were looking forward to the matches that these men were gonna have. Everyone knows that wrestling is a variety show, but surely pressing the repeat button on one of the worst rivalries of the 90s was not a good idea. The Undertaker favored dynamic, fast-moving opponents by 06, and yeah, he was not gonna get a tune out of Khali, was he? And number 1, Ray did everything he could to elevate Chavo. Okay, I'll stop. Chavo Guerrero had been Rey Mysterio's first WWE opponent when the dazzling masked man debuted back in 2002, and the pair had worked countless matches against one another since. Something felt different about their 2006 series, though. It was like Chavo had leveled up. Both men had, in truth. Rey was coming off a run as World Heavyweight Champion. Guerrero cost Rey that belt at the Great American Bash in July. His treachery then led to a series of matches between both men. They worked worked together at SummerSlam, then in a short street fight on the 22nd of September SmackDown, and again in a Falls Count Anywhere match at No Mercy. The blow-off came in a loser leaves SmackDown match that was also held under I Quit rules on the 20th of October 2006 show. My birthday, hooray! It's memorable for some simply outstanding work from these guys, and it probably should have led to bigger and better things for Chavo. To think he had been under the dire Kerwin White gimmick before Eddie's passing in 2005. WWE were happy to let someone this talented play a racist character that no one wanted to see when he could have been having some of the best bouts in town opposite real-life pals like Mysterio. Ray did everything in his power to make WWE take Chavo seriously. It was an uphill battle, but he really tried. Meanwhile, Guerrero had fire in his belly due to the Eddie pain, and he used his strong performances as therapy for that and the miserable Kerwin White creative. His matches with Ray were so good that it's astonishing he didn't level up some more heading into 2007, but we'll always have these matches at least. Have you found this look at SmackDown in 2006 quite interesting today? Well, check out another one of our binge watch videos right here and find out even more fascinating things about WWE back in the day.
Monday Night Raw 2007 was a bad year for WWE after the Chris Benoit tragedy. I had to stop watching for a while because it was just too much, and as always, wrestling is the most important of the least important things, but thoughts with the family above all else. However, Raw did of course plow forward, including that insane Vince McMahon limo explosion angle. This sort of sums up the Monday Night show all those years ago. It has no idea what it wants to be, and it just tries things and keeps its fingers crossed, and then get confused that the weird they tried was absolute garbage. So what do we get when we actually do sit down and binge watch the whole thing, as opposed to me just shouting at the wall? Well, I am Sam Miller. Let's find out. Number 12, heel versus heel. So some people will tell you this never works. You can't have two bad guys fighting. Who are the fans meant to cheer for? Of course, it's fair to say that good guy versus evil human is better, but the audience is smarter than that. If you get the basics right, anything can click. This was true with Rated RKO, who were struggling after both Edge and Randy Orton failed to win the WWE title at Backlash. They had been in the ring with Shawn Michaels and John Cena and lost it. Cena retained, and then Edge and Randy fell out. It all led to a match on the 30th of April Raw, and man, it is great. They were brilliant as teammates too, so the chemistry is there regardless. We even got some blood here. Randy got busted open the hard way, and the way Edge jumped on that, he looked like a madman. It's one of the best Raw matches of the year, and of course they had been tag champions before all this, so there was loads to lean into. The story was unique as well because they would fall out, fight like brothers before refocusing, and when they did do this, they tried to out-heel each other, which was very entertaining. Well, you cheated me, I will cheat you harder. It also helped WWE post-WrestleMania, where they often do struggle. This is really good stuff, and given that it did happen almost 20 years ago, if I was WWE, I would steal it and do it again. Number 11, the Chris Benoit Tribute Show. So once again, let me triple down on this because I do struggle to talk about it or any Chris Benoit match. Because what happened in June of 2007 was so awful, I'm not sure I ever actually got my head around it. Wrestling is meant to be the ultimate distraction. This was the polar opposite. When you do get to the 25th of June episode though, of course you get the tribute show which WWE commissioned before the truth had come out. It makes it a very complicated shift halfway through the year, and for a good while after, WWE is just not the same. Also feels somewhat unfair that wrestlers were put in this position to begin with. You just lost a co-worker with no complete knowledge. The whole thing feels very gratuitous. I'm not sure it was the best way to handle it. Number 10, the maddest match of the year. And it is Raw's first match of 2007. To this day, you see people talking about it, because what were we thinking? I'm going to let you try and guess this as well, but without prior knowledge, you will never work it out, because we indeed booked John Cena versus rapper Kevin Federline. That's right. Now, WWE only did this as well because Federline was having a public spat with wife Britney Spears, and I suppose for maximum headlines, Kevin won. I'm not kidding, he beat John Cena. This is a fever dream and it's totally insane. Now yes, Umaga, who was feuding with Cena, helped, but still, the record books read, Kevin Federline defeated John Cena, and that is ridiculous. To be fair to him though, Kevin actually isn't that bad at all, because it does look like he's having a good old time. He seems to just embrace it and take it in his stride, and look, it's not his fault he won, that's what he was told to do by everybody else. The key part though is that fans did not want to see this, and while I'm sure WWE was super happy that TMZ covered it, the audience felt a little bit insulted, and it was bonkers. A total angle with our top guy to try and get some mainstream press. Hardcore fans will never be on board with that, although WWE still tries to do it today, so I guess we'll just continue to go round the houses. Number 9, Vince McMahon wins the ECW title. So I told you that in 2007, WWE was just making stuff up as they went along. I think most knew when Vince McMahon brought back ECW it was never going to be in the same vein, but having him as the world champion, well, I'm not sure anybody envisioned that. Paul Heyman was long gone from the process too after falling out with McMahon post the awful December to Dismember show of 2006, but even Heyman must have been stunned by this. In April at Backlash, Vince teamed with Son Shane and Umaga to screw over Bobby Lashley, and it was insane. Even though it was the ECW World Championship too, McMahon swanned around on Raw constantly, as well as wearing that do-rag. This is so weird. Finally, we do get to One Night Stand a month later, and Bobby got his belt back, which is not the name of my brand new kids book. Don't think Lashley cared either, mind. He soon got drafted to Raw, and he just gave up his ECW gold. And to think that WWE couldn't figure out why this brand wouldn't work. Now, there was something entertaining to all this, as Vince was so over the top, but come 2007, a large portion of the audience wanted something different to WWE Gaga and thought ECW could be it. Sort of what NXT was going to do 10 years later. Of course, we went the opposite direction and used it as a dumping ground for the most insane ideas. It soon died a death. I mean, shock horror. Number 8, Hornswoggle McMahon was not a good plan. So as we have talked about in other videos, Mr. Kennedy in 2007 was going to have a huge storyline reveal in 2007 because he was going to be the illegitimate son of Vince McMahon. It was meant to be a super duper big deal. Kennedy then fell foul to the wellness policy, so he was gone. So when we got to the 10th of September 2007 Raw, I can only imagine somebody backstage in WWE shouted the word pivot very loudly, and this is all we could come up with. You've already figured out from the title, but yes, we turned this long-running story into a joke and said it was Hornswoggle that was Vince's son. Then come February 2008, JBL walked to the ring and said, no, it's not. Hornswoggle is actually Fit Finley's son, which begs the question, why did we do any of this to begin with? And why didn't Vince McMahon, who is rich, do the proper tests? It was all about having crap comedy, though, and just trying to make you laugh, but I have never met anybody of all my years on this planet that has actually said to me, I thought Hornswoggle McMahon as the illegitimate son was good television. Also, when we got this reveal, Triple H is in the ring laughing at Vince McMahon, but it's really not that funny. I mean, it's just a small dude. There's not that much you can say about it. All the comedy bits we do after this too absolutely land flat as well, so this really was a swing and a miss. And to think we invested so much time in it. Number 7, one match saved the 23rd of April show. So on the 23rd of April 2007, Raw actually came to Earl's Court in London. I know this for a fact because I was there. It's why when I think back now, I just have the best memories, but that is the power of being somewhere live. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. I was also doubly excited because WWE had lined up a WrestleMania 23 match between John Cena and Shawn Michaels, and flub me sideways, this thing was going to dominate the night, and actually got ranked as one of the greatest WWE matches of all time. HBK and Cena went out there in the main event, and they basically went 1 hour. Now, you barely ever see that in 2026, so to do it in 2007, well, I don't think me and my fellow Brits could believe it. It's also a really damn good match and one you should check out today, but do not watch the rest of the show. Now, once again, I remember having a good old time, but you do get Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon and Umaga taking on UK stalwart Robbie Brookside, as well as Carlito versus the Great Khali. There's Melina versus Maria too, and Matt Hardy versus Trevor Murdoch. So it's not really like we pushed the boat out here, but again, we got John Cena versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania. At the time, WWE was not investing in England as much as they do now, so I took it, I enjoyed it, and I remember it for the rest of my life. Number 6, Hulk Hogan's Forgotten Return. So the 10th of December episode was the 15th anniversary celebration for Raw, and of course that meant we had to have a lot of cakes and balloons. We were also doing more Hornswoggle jokes when the Great Khali decided he was going to crush him, so who came out to save the day? It was the one and only Hulk Hogan, who for some reason was dressed like Hollywood Hogan. That was never explained. I mean, again, it was 2007. Of course, the idea was to tie it into WrestleMania 3 as Jim Ross shouted out loud, how could Hulk Hogan ever possibly slam the Great Khali? And I was like, well, he already did that to Andre the Giant, so we know he's strong. What the hell are you talking about? Well, I say that, but we never actually found out because instead he just fought him off with his fists when he took the microphone and said, man, do you know what I love more than anything, brother? The WWE roster. I was like, all right, thanks, Hulk, that's great. For some reason, Hogan then did a Randy Savage impersonation before posing with Swoggle, and given that he also promoted the American Gladiators television show that he was a part of, Well, I think you can figure it out. Number 5, the year closed with a bang. There is some good parts to all of this though, because on the 31st of December show, WWE closed out 2007 with one hell of a statement match. Flair met Triple H with his career on the line because of course we were leaning into the retirement stipulation, and I think the game woke up that day and decided, man, I gotta do good for my hero, because these two put on an absolute classic. Or at least a classic for Raw in 2007. It also tied into this idea that come 2008, maybe it was going to be the last year for an active Nature Boy to be doing his thing, so the crowd actually gets into this and creates an atmosphere like none other. I'm certainly not trying to say that it was the best Raw match of 2007. I mean, that Cena Michaels one we just talked about is absolutely better, but in terms of just tuning into Raw in December and seeing Ric Flair and Triple H go at it, this will hit your nostalgia gland and make you go, you know what? They were pretty damn good professional wrestlers. Number 4, there's a must-see street fight. Now, I don't know why we don't talk about this more, especially because Shawn Michaels woke up on this morning and decided he was going to sell like the renters do. But on the 22nd of January 2007 Raw, so very early on in the year, we get Edge versus Shawn Michaels in a flippin' street fight. Somewhat coincidentally, they'd also met in a similar match back in 2005 as well. But if you want to sit down and say which one was better, well, you can argue it. But of course, with a couple of years extra on his experience belt, Edge just totally understands his character. So yeah, it was a flubbing good match. And of course, they both came to the ring in their jeans because it is a street fight and that's what we would do if we were on the street. And it really is one of the better things about 2007's Raw output. And again, nobody talks about this and I do not get it. So let's try and get this back into the atmosphere. Does the job. Number 3, Chris Jericho's return was a decent shot on the arm. So of course 2007 is when all those vignettes began to air on TV that said save us, and yes, before long we figured out it was Chris Jericho was coming back to the WWE after a flipping 2-year hiatus. While he did leave as somewhat of a bratish heel, he decided he would return basically as a combination of Gordon Ramsay and Bon Jovi. But I mean, look at that hair, it's pretty damn good. It all went down on the 19th of November 2007 show when Jericho decided he was going to interrupt Randy Orton, and of course that set up a match between the pair for Armageddon, which Jericho would win. It was by disqualification when JBL rushed in, but all of a sudden Raw felt interesting again, just because Chris Jericho was back, and Chris Jericho felt like a big deal, and he absolutely injected some star power into the product. You could also tell the fans were legitimately thrilled to see him again, so they were now more invested too, and while Christopher would go heel the next year and work his way back into the main events, everything he did here just keeps the excitement levels up, and as always, he was going to have to be a babyface first before going back to the dark side, and even with those shiny silver waistcoats, fans were still into him. It just felt like every single time he does come out towards the end of the year, you go, oh my gosh, Raw feels fresh again. It just goes to show Chris Jericho did know what he was doing. Leave when the fans get a bit bored, and come back when they're desperate for you. Number 2, John Cena and Bobby Lashley. Now, one of the big success stories of 2007 was Bobby Lashley. He got a big push in ECW, got an even bigger push when he came to Raw, and of course, he was involved in that WrestleMania 23 feud when Vince McMahon was going crazy with Donald Trump. The only issue when he did jump across to Monday nights, despite the machine getting behind him, is that one of his first bookings was to go and look at John Cena. That led us to the Great American Bash when we got Bobby versus John, and well, Lashley lost. The issue was, even with all the pomp and circumstance, he actually got injured during this and had to go and take 6 months off. Nobody could believe that too, because again, everybody was into Bobby Lashley. He clearly was the next big thing, and now he wasn't going to be able to come back before February 2008. Well, that was meant to be the idea anyway, but everything fell through the floor, because even before Bob had come back to TV, we had learned he had been released. So when you are watching the TV in 2007, you just see Bobby Lashley go up and up and up, when all of a sudden he does bump into John Cena and bang! Everything falls down again. But it is just absolutely awful to watch in real time. And of course, Lashley wouldn't be back on WWE television for years. If you really want to write this down in your trivia book, it was 2018 before we saw Lashley back in the WWE. So either way, this was bad news, and not the kind that Wade Barrett used to deliver. Number 1, the Vince McMahon limo explosion. So we had to talk about this eventually because it is just so damn dumb. If you're wondering why Vince McMahon wanted to do this too, I presume he looked in the mirror one day and decided I'd look too old for television, so we have to write me off the show, and he decided the best way to do this would be on the 11th of June 2007 edition of Raw, when he got into his limousine and it blew up. The cliffhanger, of course, would be who decided to kill Vince McMahon. Now, there's so many things that came off the back of this because one, just before this, when Vince was walking to his car, you get that skit with the WWE roster and Paul London laughing, which eventually came back to whip Paul London right in the ass because he was punished for this, even though nobody told him what was going on. So what did you expect him to do? Part 2 is that Donald Trump read about this and thought it was real, so rang up WWHQ to make sure his friend was okay. And yes, number 3 is that the story did get swept under the rug because Just 24 hours later, we learned about the Chris Benoit tragedy, and quite rightly, nobody from WWE thought this could continue. The most ridiculous part of all of this, though, is that Vince McMahon would never have stuck to this. He was acting like he was never going to return to television, but we were still seeing him on Raw in 2020. You telling me in 2007 he was going to say, I'm not doing this anymore? I mean, I'm sure his intentions were pure in early June, but you would have given it 6 months, and you just know what the deal would have been. He would have come back as a skeleton or something, be like, oh my gosh, I'm zombie Vince McMahon. Either way, though, it was just pushing the envelope too far and really did feel like soap opera TV. And who the hell was going to be revealed as the criminal here, and why wouldn't they have gone to jail? Let's say it was poor Mr. Kennedy. You would have had to arrested him. A stupid idea, I tell you. A really stupid idea. So 2007 WWE kind of feels like a lie to me. I know it happened because life in life, but in terms of memories, I don't have many. This could, of course, be due to the worst tragedy in wrestling history with the unreal news of Chris Benoit and his family, and yeah, I'll tell you for free, I stopped watching wrestling for a while, I just needed a break. It did trigger a very distinct shift for WWE, as you will see today, because when you do watch all of SmackDown in 2007, well, a lot changes. So we binge-watched it. I am Simon Miller. Let's go. Number 9, the first show of the year was nuts. 2nd of January, 2007, SmackDown kicked back into gear and it was bizarre. This was mostly as the roster was desperate for new faces, so when General Manager Teddy Long arranged a beat-the-clock challenge to crown a new #1 contender for the WWE title, well, there was some mad picks. It was all to face Batista at the Royal Rumble, so it was quite the opportunity, and this was the lineup. Brian Kendrick versus Paul London, Kane versus Chavo Guerrero, King Booker versus Gregory Helms, Jimmy Wang Yang versus Tatanka, and Mr. Kennedy versus Chris Benoit. I am talking about that Tatanka 2, the one from back in the day. We didn't even get a finish in that match either. Given the rules, it went to a time limit draw. As you can guess too, only a few people actually had the fans' belief they could win, and of course we only did Kendrick versus London because they were friends. Although they did both go crazy. It actually made the whole thing more entertaining and Kennedy got the best time too, but the sad thing was, just as he was celebrating, Teddy Long came out and said, we're going to do more of these matches next week. That kind of felt unfair. Ashley also beat Jillian in the women's division, and yeah, they weren't allowed to do anything. Not sure they had much training time either, so once again, that is unfair. Given it was the start of the year though, we just needed something fresh and exciting from the Blue brand, and we did not get it. Wasn't necessarily true at the time, but these days seeing Tatanka in that role, well, I like it. What a dude. Bring back Tatanka. Number 8, the Forgotten Diva. Do you remember Chrissy Vane? I'm going to say you don't, and if you do, awesome, you're that guy. She did sign a developmental deal on January 2006 and got her call up to SmackDown on the 28th of September 2007. Vane decided to attack Tori Wilson too, after Tori had lost to Victoria. That feels a little mean. I mean, at least go after the winner. A week later, on the 5th of October, we saw her again trying to win the favour of Vicky Guerrero, and that was it, genuinely. By the 10th of October, she was basically let go, so what the flub happened? It's not like she wasn't getting traction in developmental, and I would assume that WWE had a plan here. Otherwise, what did they think was going to happen? And it just felt so weird when watching it on TV. When you do some research though, it does sound like Chrissy may have actually left due to family issues. So even though it was years ago, let's hope she is okay. And that is a real shame timeline-wise. I mean, you're all good to go and then life goes life. And because her run was so short, her career has sort of been erased from the history books. In 2011, she left the industry entirely, although Vane did make a mini comeback in 2019. I think her last recorded match was 2021, so who knows if she has more plans. That was likely post-pandemic. Maybe she just wanted to dip her toe one last time. It shall forever go down in lore, though, that she beat up Tori Wilson for absolutely no reason. I'm just going to hazard a guess. I don't think we're going to get an update on this now. Number 7, Chris Benoit's final SmackDown match. We shouldn't look out for stuff like this, but I guess we are a curious bunch by nature. I've talked about it a lot, but I really do struggle to watch Chris Benoit matches these days. Each to their own, but if it wasn't for videos like this, I just wouldn't. I find it too difficult. When you do go through SmackDown in 2007, however, you can't help but watch his movements, and yeah, just before he does jump to ECW, Chris had a match with Edge and they get a solid 19 minutes. No shock to hear it's very good, especially for TV, and before this he was in a feud with MVP too. Suppose that's his last proper program. It was over the US Championship, and MVP has spoken about this. He feels like the whole thing helped put him on the map. Soon afterwards, though, Benoit does go to WWE ECW to fill the role Kurt Angle had left, and then, yeah, the worst news came soon after this. I mean, there really are no words, even almost 20 years removed. It's just terrible. Number 6, Ric Flair's run should have been more special. In the 2027 draft, Ric Flair was moved from Raw to SmackDown. Tying into what we were just speaking about, he too went after the US title to try and help get MVP even higher. It was alright. When it was done, the Nature Boy went and found his old friend Batista, and he got injured. It's never fun. It did mean he was out for 3 months, and when he returned, he went to Raw. Don't try and justify it. It was a very Vince McMahon decision. Well, he didn't do much on the blue brand, so let's just sneak him back across. So I don't want to call it a waste of time, but it wasn't great by WWE. There's loads Flair could have done on the other show, although given he was on the shelf for so long, it did kind of feel like a big deal when he did turn back up on Raw. Absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that. Still though, he had 2 matches on SmackDown, then he was back on Monday nights, and that ain't great. The second bout is totally mad too, because it was Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels versus Edge, Chavo Guerrero, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins in a steel cage. What? That was early 2000 as well, after he had gone back to Raw, so don't overthink it. Of course, Ric Flair's retirement run was well in at this point, and we've talked about that before. It was good, but much like this decision, it did feel like WWE was sort of booking it week to week. And that never works long term. Number 5, WWE dropped a wedding angle. So we all deep down love a good sports entertainment wedding. WWE also loves to drop a story from nowhere, so I guess at one point these two things were finally going to converge. This was the 23rd of June 2007 when GM Teddy Long proposed to his girlfriend Crystal. Didn't even have a last name in WWE land, so I guess a wedding could sort that out for her too. It did not go well for Teddy because Crystal ran away until she changed her mind, and yeah, that should have been the first red flag. Of course, there was going to be some more nonsense, so come September, Teddy had an in-storyline heart attack. This was during the ceremony too, meaning the cliffhanger was, would Teddy Long be able to recover, and would they finally be married? Turned out the answer was neither, because WWE just woke up one day and forgot the whole thing. It got worse too, because Crystal was released from her contract, so when Teddy was back, he honestly said nothing about this. It was kind of like we all made it up. Let me make this clear as well. This had loads of television time during the summer. Then nope, shut up. I wouldn't say I'm complaining because it was not great, but Crystal getting let go seems so unfair. She didn't book herself in this angle, and I suppose WWE had done the actual wedding and the twist, and it's always that event which does the numbers. They already had those, so why bother following it up? Number 4, a sliding doors moment. The 11th of May, 2007 SmackDown, Edge cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase and it wasn't even meant to be his. Mr. Kennedy had won the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania, and this was meant to be his big push to the top. He then got injured and the diagnosis was his shoulder was wrecked, so yeah, WWE went in a new direction, and why not use the ultimate opportunist in a role he had shined in before? The real kicker, however, is that as soon as WWE had Kenny lose his prize, it turned out his injury was not that bad at all, and really he was going to be out 3 weeks max. It meant we never needed to do this, but it was too late, so yeah, after Batista and The Undertaker had a really good steel cage match, here was Edge, cashed in, new champion. It must have really gone to Ken, especially because he was also meant to be revealed as Vince McMahon's illegitimate son in 2007, when a drug scandal saw him suspended, and that was thrown out the window too. WWE did not capitalize on that one either. We turned that whole story into a joke. Hornswoggle was the kid, then actually wasn't the kid. Don't worry about it. It really was cursed, as Edge then got hurt in July, so yeah, when you are watching SmackDown, it's just chaos. WWE trying to figure out in real time. It was a total roller coaster. Number 3, the Great Khali as champion. Now this isn't a massive shock, because if you were big, Vince McMahon at some point would try and make you the world champion. This is why the Great Khali was subbed in after that Edge injury we just talked about, and man, this was uninspired, because the Giant won a Battle Royal on the 20th of July SmackDown. So we didn't even build to anything. It was just the wrong call because the audience at the time wanted compelling matches, and that was not Khali's thing. It only lasted 2 months, but look at August, for example. The Great One took on Kane, so we just gone back to Monster versus Monster, which was just not the way in 2007. Nobody cared. It was also such a stark contrast to the Rated R Superstar that made it all worse. WWE should have picked somebody new to rule the roost for a while, as after the Kennedy Edge bad luck, the whole show needed a shot on the arm. So this felt very poorly thought out, and my gosh, it's not good going back to it now either. Number 2, Batista ruled. Big Dave still does not get the credit he deserves. If he was a bit stiff at the start of his career, once he found his feet, man, he was just the guy. He was given the green light to get the title off the Great Khali at Unforgiven in September, and Rey Mysterio was involved there too, so I felt sorry for Rey. He looked smaller than ever. Now Edge actually would return soon to beat the Animal at Armageddon, but do not understate Batista's impact here. Him winning the title from Khali makes SmackDown night and day. Within 3 months he turned it around, and even his No Mercy bout with the Great Khali in the Punjabi prison was alright. Dave also wasn't playing around. His mini-feud with The Undertaker at Cyber Sunday in the Survivor Series will remind you of their chemistry, and when he did go to war with Edge properly on the 30th of November SmackDown, well, it's damn good again. Even when Batista had his last man standing match with Kane towards the end of the year, he wouldn't falter. This is what I meant earlier. Here was your guy. Use all that poor luck and light up the animal instead. The bottom line is that SmackDown was just better when Batista was the man. He should have won that Battle Royal. The rest was silly. Number 1, Drew McIntyre. In general, you of course need hindsight glasses to get it, because in 2007 he was just the big new Scottish guy. You could see why WWE had signed him, but I'm not sure anybody anticipated what was coming down the line. He does debut on the 12th of October SmackDown to beat Brett Majors, and guess who that is? That's right, it's Matt Cardona, soon to be Zack Ryder on WWE TV. A week later, Drew also defeated Kurt Hawkins, who was Ryder's best friend, when he decided he would enter a tag team battle royal with Dave Taylor. It's classic WWE. Well, I believe they're both from that United Kingdom place. Why don't we put them together? From nowhere, though, McIntyre vanishes because in early 2008, he got moved to Raw. It was then back to FCW because I suppose that WWE felt like he needed more seasoning, which could mean maybe he was moved around too fast. That happened a lot in 2007. It's just a night and day presentation compared to his big return in 2017, as this version of Drew feels eager to please. Makes sense, he was young and brand new, but the McIntyre with a chip on his shoulder is just way better. It's almost like a different human being. It's also inspiring because it shows that you can make it work. Just getting a contract doesn't equal instant success, but getting let go isn't the death knell either. Sometimes it is on you, and Drew McIntyre from 2007 is proof positive of all of that. And everything else you spotted when you did go through a lot of SmackDowns from 2007, well, make sure you let us know in the comments below. Before you like the video, share the video, and damn it, subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to get even more binge-watching videos in your face, which sounds absolutely disgusting. But otherwise, my friends, have a terrific day, and I will talk to you again soon. Where were you in 2008? It's a stupid question because I could be referring to January or I could be referring to June 27th. The point is, try and cast your mind back if you can. And actually, 2008 is one of those years that when you do cast your mind back, maybe nothing comes to the forefront of your brain, but then you go, actually, it was pretty decent. So what else can we learn if we do binge watch every single WWE Raw from 2008? Well, my name is Simon Mel. I have no life, so I have done it for you. Sit down. Let us go. Number 10, WWE should do WrestleMania Rewind again. So the 10th of March 2008 Raw was billed as a chance to relive WrestleMania for the second time, or basically get some sequels. So for example, we had John Cena versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 23, so that was happening again, but we were also going to get Triple H versus Kane, which had gone down at WrestleMania 15. And I tell you, nobody remembers that. The Undertaker and Mark Henry were also going to do another go-around for WrestleMania 22, but this time it was in a casket match, because of course, if you tell fans you're about to put somebody in a coffin, they're going to tune in. Because WWE in 2008 was totally bonkers as well, they even did the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov versus the US Express duo of Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo, and that goes back to the first WrestleMania. Now sadly that never made it to TV, because I suppose somebody changed their mind, but you do get Mr. Kennedy versus Fit Finlay, because they were both in Money in the Bank. So that one doesn't really tie in, but I felt like I should tell you. Now, you don't want to overdo this because, of course, that would get a little bit boring, but I totally think in 2026 we do find ourselves during a quiet time. You absolutely could say, well, guess what we're going to do for you free on television? We're going to take a bunch of old WrestleMania matches, and we're going to give them a round 2. Like, imagine there was one card, and of course I'm exaggerating here, where you got Gunther versus Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, or even Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio. Now, of course, the counterpoint to this is, why wouldn't they just wait till pay-per-view, Simon? And you're right, but I'm living in fantasy land, so don't you get mad at me. Now, it wasn't necessarily executed very well when WWE did pull the trigger, but that doesn't mean it's not a good concept on paper, and given that we're always looking for something new, well, WWE could absolutely wind this back. You also already have the name because WrestleMania Rewind is perfect. Could slap that over Netflix. They'd love it. Number 9, Michael Cole and the future. Now, I think Michael Cole gets dragged way too often these days. He has been doing this job for a long ass time, and think of some of the things he's had to overcome and the obstacles thrown in his way. Given that he is still in that seat, I don't think it's by accident. Now, of course, when we do start talking about WWE's commentary team in 2008, you probably already know the incident. It went down during the 2008 draft when WWE decided, oh, hi, we do want to make Michael Cole front and center, but let's do that by basically pulling the rug out from underneath Jim Ross. We didn't need to do that. Because as many people have spoken about after the fact, Vince McMahon, for whatever reason, had decided he was going to humble and embarrass Jim Ross for no real reason. I mean, there's been multiple skits on Raw where McMahon has done the same, but after sitting down for a meeting with JR to discuss the draft, apparently Jim Ross said something along the lines of, well, I'm more than happy to stay on Raw. So surprise, surprise, when they were live, Ross was caught completely off guard when his name and graphic flashed up, because now he was going to SmackDown. The camera then cuts to Jim, and of course he's pissed off about this. He just got trolled on television. He is clearly super mad as well, and if he was a cartoon, he'd probably have steam coming from his ears. And Jim Ross wrote about this in his book that he didn't see it coming at all. He felt comfortable on Mondays and thought his team with Jerry Lawler fit in perfectly, but just because that had become common knowledge, Vince McMahon decided to punch him metaphorically in the face. There's also a definite shift in how Raw comes across when Michael Cole does replace Jim Ross, because of course there would be. I mean, for starters, Lawler had to get used to new chemistry with a brand new dude, and because WWE hadn't planned this, well, it all felt so last minute. I mean, I really think much like when you want to change performers in the ring, you have to do that with your persona outside the squared circle as well. This was dumb, man, and unnecessary. It's not like Jim Ross didn't put the work in. Number 8, a political insert was very, very awkward. So you think it'd be obvious by now that religion and politics don't necessarily work well with pro wrestling if you're a promoter, because you're always going to split your base. Now, certain things have been going on recently in a specific company which are important, but at the same time, look at all the mess it causes afterwards. It is never fun. On the 21st of April 2000 Raw, however, the WWE decided they were going to dedicate their valuable time to something that had nothing to do with professional wrestling. Because Vince let Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and John McCain cut short pre-date promos on the show, and just imagine that today. I mean, Hillary even dropped a reference about King of the Ring and called herself Heel Rod, and Obama pretended to be The Rock. When we cut to McCain, he was basically doing Hulk Hogan. It was pretty bizarre to see WWE use time on their main show to let politicians in the US presidential fight put forward their cases for office. And while I'm sure a lot of people are very happy about the fact it was balanced, once again, I just think we got to keep politics out of wrestling, so when you do sit down to watch your sports entertainment, you can switch your brain off and forget about the troubles outside. Number 7, it's when they finally went HD. So if you are of a certain age, you will remember when one day your favorite television program said to you, can you believe it, my friends? We are now able to broadcast at your face in high definition. Sadly, I am of this ilk, and I even remember the first time I plugged in my Xbox 360 and looked at Oblivion or The Elder Scrolls 4. I couldn't believe how good it looked. Then I was like, damn it, I'm old. But on the 21st of January 2008 episode of Raw, we do dole things up to the nines, and honestly, you can go and watch the night and day before all this. It's a massive shift, and how the flub we ever used to watch wrestling in standard definition, I don't know. It's also pretty funny because the performers were told, you're gonna have to watch those tan lines, everybody. And yep, sometimes people do come out and you can see where the stuff is. Now, of course, this all came about during the road to the Royal Rumble, so WWE can invest their time there, but it's still pretty funny to hear Jim Ross and co shouting, oh my gosh, WWHD is here, and isn't it absolutely fantastic? Everybody was caught up in this craze though, especially as we all debated about what HDMI cable to buy, because once again we're nerds, but things were never going to be the same. Number 6, what could have been with William Regal. So William Regal is one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time, and if you are training to be a professional wrestler right now, you need to go and study this man. That's how good he is. It all ties in here because on the 21st of April Raw, CM Punk actually lost to William Regal in the King of the Ring final, which meant William was now royal. Now let's not pretend that Regal wasn't excellent in this role, because he really was, when very sadly he got suspended on the 20th of May due to violating the company wellness policy. He then returned in late July for a match with Punk for the World Heavyweight title, and he won the IC title from Santino Marella on 3rd of November. If we're being honest, things were just never the same. Now, the stories these days is that William Regal was actually penciled in for a world title run, and actually, I do believe it. His work was of such a level that if Vince McMahon and co weren't watching this thinking, oh man, we've got to do something with this British fellow, well, they would have been totally crazy. Then, very sadly, sure, his personal issues got in the way, which is way more important than pro wrestling, I want to make that clear. But if you are watching 2008, you do kind of pick up on it. The suspension was for 60 days as well, because he had kind of fallen foul of this before, and in retrospect, his alliance late in the year with Layla was a crafty decision by creative too. That gave the diva something impactful to do, and it made Regal look like a horrible person because he was essentially ripping her away from prior love interest Jamie Noble. And we didn't do that so that William and Layla could get involved in romantic fluff. William Regal did it just because he could, and that's why he was a damn good heel. So it really is one of the finest main event pushes that got taken away from WWE writers, but once again, he seems to be in an excellent place now, and what is more important than that? I can just imagine the fun we could have had at SummerSlam though, because instead of Triple H versus the Great Khali, we could have got Triple H versus William Regal, and they liked each other too. Oh, my friends, what could have been? Number 5, Jeff Hardy's dream match lived up to the hype. So once again, if you do go back and watch the first half of 2008 especially, you will notice, oh my gosh, Jeff Hardy is so over, he probably needs to become a main eventer and the World Heavyweight Champion. I mean, even on the 7th of January episode of Raw, Jeff Hardy was having an awesome steel cage war with Umaga, and the whisper in the wind dive spot from the top of the cage does not get enough love. Also, go and watch Randy Orton's face when he was watching from ringside. He couldn't believe it. Jump forward to the 11th of February edition as well, and oh my gosh, Jeff was wrestling Shawn Michaels, which Hardy had told everyone from day one was his flipping dream match. Of course, the thing main evented the show, and Jeff actually won here, which many people didn't think was going to happen because Jeff Hardy was the Intercontinental Champion at the time and his belt wasn't on the line. But WWE did not do that old wrestling trope, so not only did Jeff Hardy just beat the Heartbreak Kid, but he was still the IC champion. I think we all forget about this. WWE was pushing him to the moon. So if you can source this, make sure you give it a watch, because of course sometimes dream matches can fall short, but this is not the case at all. And you can actually see Shawn Michaels smiling during this. He's having the time of his life. It's why when eventually Jeff did jump over to SmackDown, he did get into the world title scene, and you probably know the rest of that story. It's a bit like William Regal. What could have been? Number 4, this forgotten feud of the year blow-off. So you will not be surprised to hear that when most fans started talking about the feud of the year in WWE, they went for Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. I mean, it's one hell of a story. It basically lasts the entire year, and you have great matches at Judgment Day, Great American Bash, Unforgiven, and No Mercy. And of course, you had that moment when Jericho accidentally punched HBK's wife at SummerSlam. From the moment Jericho decided to smash Shawn's head into that television set, fans simply couldn't get enough of it, and I guess a large portion of that is because you had generations coming together. I mean, Jericho's whole point was, Shawn Michaels, you were my childhood hero, and now you're an asshole. Oh yeah, I think we should fight. A little known fact though is that despite working no less than 4 pay-per-views in 2008, the world-class pairing actually managed to have another one on the 10th of November 2008 Raw, and yes, it's flipping excellent. It was a last man standing match too, which also came after Chris had feuded with John Cena, but somehow it still ruled. Even if Jerry Lawler is obsessed with trying to talk like a British person. But you can just ignore all that and see Y2J and HBK just blowing off their feud. It's why Jericho always mentions it today when people do ask him about his greatest matches. You know what? It's not wrong. Number 3, Mike Adamle as Raw GM was a trip. Now, it's only fair to say that Mike Adamle is dealing with some serious health issues today, which likely affected that here too. And once again, that's the most important thing in the world. I love professional wrestling, but it's not going to change your life. For some reason though, in 2008, WWE felt like they needed a professional looking person to be the general manager. So yes, they went for former Raw commentator Mike Adamle. He was announced on the 28th of July 2008 Raw, and believe you me, a lot of people started scratching their heads. It only lasted till the 3rd of November though, after slapping Randy Orton the previous week. And then, surprise, surprise, Randy let everybody know that if Mike Adamle wasn't fired, he was going to walk out the company. So Shane and Stephanie McMahon were a bit like, okay, you better exit stage left. Now, why WWE did this to begin with, I don't know, but I think the only reason is because somebody pitched to Vince McMahon, and he thought it would serve as some sort of a swerve, so he executed it. And yes, he got this right because everybody was like, what the flub is going on? I mean, even as an announcer on ECW, Mike Adamle felt like he was still trying to get his head around professional wrestling. So when you put him in a spot where he had to talk even more, well, he called Jeff Hardy Jeff Harvey, and that was it, and nobody ever let him forget it. At one point, he even forgot what the ring ropes were called too. And also, let's not forget that he had just replaced Joey Styles, and everybody loved that guy. He's also totally mad that we put him in a feud with Randy Orton, but I guess it ended the failed experiment. But once again, at least he gave it his best. But was it any good? No. Number 2, John Cena had a pretty crazy year. So 2008 was a year of extreme highs on pay-per-view, and then seeing John Cena try to adapt to the PG environment and being given some really bizarre creative from creative. Now, his Royal Rumble return is legendary and will likely go down as the best Royal Rumble surprise return of all time. But once again, because the WWE was moving away from this adult product and trying to appeal to kids, they looked at John Cena and decided, well, you can kind of be a cartoon. I mean, we all remember what happened on the 7th of July 2000 episode of Raw. He spray-painted JBL is poopy on John Bradshaw Layfield's limousine. And even today, it's like, dude, you could have just written JBL sucks, But you won't be surprised to hear we only did this because Vince McMahon thought it was funny. Wasn't. John actually suffered a neck injury too in 2008, which meant he did have to take some time off. But by the time he did come back at the Survivor Series, he defeated Chris Jericho for the world title. But even for the rest of the year, it just kind of feels like WWE doesn't know exactly what they want to do. He does have a trio of excellent matches on the show because you get Shawn Michaels on the 10th of March, Jeff Hardy on the 2nd of June, and that kind of street fight versus Umaga on the 16th of June. And let me tell you this, if you have never seen John Cena and Umaga work together, my gosh, they have chemistry. Everything else though does feel like he is the experiment to figure out just how childish they do have to go. And look, John Cena always knew what he was doing, but I don't think he was being used to the best of his abilities. The alliance with Crime Time absolutely had promise, but of course WWE ended that before it had got going. So yeah, he was the hamster in the wheel, but of course he was always going to be able to deal with it because he was John Cena. But it is bizarre to watch it today. You can see him going left, right, and sideways. Number one, CM Punk was never treated well as world champion. Now that shouldn't surprise you, because if you were watching in 2008, you remember this. But even though CM Punk actually won the World Heavyweight Championship, which nobody could believe, he was always treated like a number 2 guy. And I hate it when WWE does this. They did it with Kofi Kingston, they did it with Rey Mysterio. It just never works. It was still awesome to watch him cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Edge to become the world champion on the 30th of June 2000 episode of Raw. Straight away, you do have to talk about this scramble match at Unforgiven, which kind of proves all this. CM Punk was the champion, and we took him out the match when he got beaten up, and Chris Jericho took his place, and was CM Punk ever allowed to get his revenge? No. Even when he was able to go toe-to-toe with proper main eventers like Batista at the Great American Bash and again on the 21st of July episode of Raw, they ended with a double DQ and a non-finish. So once again, CM Punk was working with the big boys, but for whatever reason, we wouldn't allow him to beat them. Now that was different at SummerSlam because he was able to get a pin over JBL, but just go and listen to the promos by Layfield on the build-up to this match. The whole time he is saying, "You're so lucky to be here, CM Punk, and you ain't ever going to be a star." I don't want to be that guy, but I imagine that was written by Vince McMahon. It's absolutely one of the reasons he decided to leave in 2014 as well, because he hadn't forgotten about this. And even after he exploded again in 2011, well, WWE went Britney Spears and they kind of did it again. Ultimately, somebody did come up with the very good idea that CM Punk should be the world champion, but when it comes to pulling the trigger, well, you can see it from Raw 2008. We never really did. Are you a time traveler from 2008? If so, thanks so much for coming to the modern day. We appreciate you. And it really works, because today we are going back to SmackDown from that era, and I would like your input in the comments below. As always, though, there's plenty of good and there's plenty of bad we can get into, which is what we're going to do today. So thank you for joining me, my friends. My name is Simon Miller, and that's right. Here's 10 things you learned binge-watching every WWE SmackDown from 2008. Number 10th, the 25th of April episode was a blockbuster. Because not only was it the go-home show for Backlash, but I think WWE just realized they needed something big. So you get the first ever meeting between Edge and CM Punk, as well as a no DQ world title showdown pitting champion The Undertaker versus Batista. Punk had just won his first Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 24, when all of a sudden he did find himself in a feud with the Rated R superstar, and oh my gosh, fans needed it. I mean, ever since Punk debuted on ECW, everybody wanted to see him climb the ladder. Now it was flipping happening in front of your eyes. And also, SmackDown's only 2 hours, it flies by. Let's also not forget that Taker and Big Dave were having a rematch from WrestleMania 23, which is also a great bout you should go out of your way to see. You could have main evented any pay-per-view of that year with these 2 matches, and it would have been a great old time. We just did it on random-ass television. Do not forget as well, this was also a few months before Punk cashed in his case on Edge during a June Raw. Weirdly, Batista was involved in that too. So it's brand synergy, people. They were together. Number 9, Shelton Benjamin should have been pushed, and pushed properly. There's this idea today that WWE really tried to push Shelton Benjamin, but it just didn't click, and that is total baloney, my friends. We gave him like 75% of the nudge, and we never went all the way, and to this day it annoys me. During the 2008 draft, though, Benjamin is moved from ECW to SmackDown, and yes, I get it, he does win the United States Championship at the Great American Bash in July. He then has a great match with Jeff Hardy on the 15th of August SmackDown that's worth seeing, and of course that ended in DQ. WWE trying to protect both guys, and there was interference from MVP, so all of this was really, really good. The thing is, though, after this point, you're always waiting for WWE to take Shelton and throw him to the moon, but they just never did. It also would have helped people in that main event scene because they were desperate to work with new talent who could go, and in terms of being a pure athlete, I still to this day think Shelton Benjamin at minimum is the top 3. I don't buy into this idea that his promo ability was holding him back either, because if we had given him more promo time, he would have got better, and also so many other individuals did make it to the main event scene, and they were no better than Shelton on the mic. So this was just a drop ball. And if you do need evidence, do you know where you go? SmackDown in 2008. Number 8, the Divas title. So one day somebody decided that we did need a separate women's championship on SmackDown, and as you now know, what did we call it? Well, we call it the Divas Championship. Now, I do not put the blame on any of the performers that we are about to talk about because they just didn't stand a chance, because they got no time, and let's not forget we learned this later on, these women were also being told, you're not allowed to fight like the men, you can't even punch each other, so what the flub were they meant to do? The brand new Divas title was introduced at the Great American Bash pay-per-view in July though, but actually was only defended a handful of times for the rest of the year, and once again that sums it up. How the hell are you meant to get a new belt over as something important if it never actually turns up on your television? Saying that though, I am talking to you in 2026 and WWE has kind of done the same with the Women's United States belt. So what the hell do I know? And listen, McCool was able to stay at the top of the division for a while, and you could tell she did know what she was doing, but really there's nothing of note here. But just to repeat myself, there's also nothing that anybody could have done. If you're being told to work outside of yourself and not being allowed to put your best foot forward, well then nobody is ever going to see your best. I think Vince McMahon was just totally stuck in the Attitude Era way of doing things. He had a blueprint after all, but by 2008 we really should have moved on. And the shameful thing is, we had not. Number 7, Vladimir Kozlov, was actually pretty good. Now this is where we get into it. We all remember that Vladimir Kozlov went on to challenge Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship, but this was part of WWE's plan because before he got there, old Vlad beat Matt Bentley, Matt Logan, Leroy Kincaid, Marty Garner, Colin Delaney, Phil Atlas, Funaki, Nunzio, Shannon Moore, Jimmy Wang Yang, Jamie Noble, Domino, Stevie Richards twice, Jesse, Festus, before he finally found his way to the Great Khali on the 26th of September episode of SmackDown. Now that one went to a no contest because of course it did, but Kozlov was running through every single name I just read to you, so yeah, if you were watching, sort of under the current, it was a bit like, well, this dude's pretty damn cool. Now, the whole idea was by the time he got to the tippity top, we were all going to buy into this, but it just didn't work, and that's mostly because for some reason WWE decided they should go back to the plodding main event style of the 80s, and that's just not what the new audience wanted. Now, of course, WWE benefited because social media was not what it was back in 2008 as it is today. That likely would have derailed this. But the truth is, by the time Vladimir Kozlov does get to that main event scene, fans have made up their mind. We did one match with Triple H, and then we reversed it. Actually, before long, he was sitting down with Santina Marella and become a comedy act. Believe you me, nobody thought that at the start of 2008. So he does stand out because he is unique, and I guess his no-frills presentation is different too. But after a while, well, there's just not much else we can do. Number 6, SmackDown's Halloween costumes are a must-see. So look at the image on the screen right now, my friends. I would appreciate it. And yes, that's Jim Ross as a sailor. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess this wasn't his idea, because all WWE ever really wanted to do was bully good old JR. Taz is stood there in camo, which looks a little bit better. But imagine you'd never heard of Halloween, and you just tuned into SmackDown. You'd be like, what the flip is going on, and why are they dressed like that? Just for some trivia down the line, in case you do need it in a pub quiz, you also get the Undertaker versus Chavo Guerrero in a casket match on this show. It's even funnier though, because of course a bout with a coffin is meant to be scary, and yet watching on and commentating you had Sailor Ross and Taz thinking he was G.I. Joe. Sometimes WWE really did lose their minds, but you probably should go and watch this, just so you can hear them talking about another man being buried alive, while they are dressed like cartoons. Number 5, Mick Foley's commentary issues were obvious. So speaking about people behind the commentary desk who probably were unhappy, let's talk about Mick Foley. Thankfully, he had joined on as a colour guy, and of course he was brilliant at this. Anytime you gave Foley a microphone, he totally knew what to do, and it was no different behind the announce desk. As we would later find out, and Mick himself has talked about this, Vince McMahon, as he would also do with JR, Taz and Michael Cole, would cause such a fuss in Mick Foley's ear and go totally crazy with expletives that one day Foley confronted his boss and said, if you continue to talk to me that way, I won't do this job anymore. Vince McMahon didn't take him seriously. Quite clearly, Vince McMahon just wanted to produce his announced this way, so Mick was like, you know what, I'm done, I'm never doing this again, and he never went back. And I really would encourage you to go find an interview that Foley did about this, because if what he says is true, and it most definitely is, what the flub was Vince McMahon thinking? I think this is a massive shame though, because while Mick Foley may not have found his voice properly behind the commentary desk, he absolutely would have done. He was just getting his feet wet. But yeah, because he was yelled at so much, he does leave, and just go look at his face when we do these cutaways. You can see, man, he is not a happy camper. Number 4, the other Jeff Hardy and Undertaker match that needs more praise. The 1st of July 2002 episode of Raw will go down in folklore history, because in many ways it was the real coming of age for young Jeff Hardy. He earned The Undertaker's respect by bouncing around the ring in a fantastic ladder match. And honestly, if you were watching at the time, nobody could believe it. One moment Jeff Hardy was a tag team guy, then it was like, wait a minute, he's a flipping WrestleMania main eventer. Now somehow it took another 6 years before Hardy was at the tippity top, just because of things we've documented elsewhere. But here is the wonderful thing, there is another awesome match between Jeff Hardy and Undertaker that you absolutely need to watch from the 14th of November 2008 SmackDown. Once again, it's over in good old Manchester, England. Us UK people got some good ones. The fans were totally into this as well and did see it as a dream match because they love The Undertaker and they love Jeff too. So if you do have time today, and again it's only 16 minutes, sit down and watch this. It is so damn good. And once again, The Undertaker understands what he has to do. He is bumping his undead butter for this guy, and that only helps Jeff Hardy come across as his equal. This is an example we should show to more people. It really is very good. Number 3, Triple H's draft jump made up for 2004. So in 2004, as I'm sure you will remember, WWE made a huge deal out of the fact that Triple H was going to have to jump to SmackDown because he just got traded by Raw. Then before the end of the show, Triple H had come back 2 Monday nights because, bro, we gotta swerve him. Thankfully in 2008 they finally did do this and it was the right time. Triple H needed new opponents to feud with and the whole roster just needed to be switched around. And of course the Kane was a big deal. You had to make a splash. He was also the WWE champion at the time too, which made it even bigger. And yeah, when you do watch the rest of 2008, Triple H on SmackDown was an absolute joy. For whatever reason, it felt like he was ready to be more given than he had been on Raw, and it just helps the locker room from top to bottom. Also, this whole draft nonsense was not going to be able to sustain another switcheroo like we had done in 2004, because WWE was trying to sell this as a serious thing. So if you did tune in, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's going to happen, and then you got swerved. Well, that always goes wrong, because then you can't trust the company. Also, if we're being honest, SmackDown needed the boost, and Triple H was a big deal. So I actually liked all of this, and I thought it did make SmackDown a way better show, and he had all these great matches. So yes, I know that people like to throw shade at Triple H today, but if you are talking about his in-ring wrestling work, this dude was flipping good. Number 2, Batista's forgotten shot at Shawn Michaels. Everybody needs to go and watch the 4th of April 2008 episode of SmackDown to remind yourself that even though Batista was a massive jacked up super dude, this dude knew exactly what he was doing when it came to the world of sports entertainment. Because Batista was so damn mad at Shawn Michaels that he had retired Ric Flair at WrestleMania 24, he walked to the ring, he got in HBK's face, and he told him exactly what he thought. Now some people acted like it was overkill because Batista sold this like Shawn Michaels had pushed Ric Flair in front of a train or something, but I don't care. When you do break this down, it was just David telling Shawn, that was my friend, and now you have kicked him out of the industry. As far as I'm concerned, he's never coming back. Now, of course, if you want to counterpoint that by saying it was a retirement match and what was Shawn Michaels going to do, just lay down, you would make a good point, but I just love seeing Batista in this mode. If he could sink his teeth into something personal, well, he became a larger-than-life superstar. I would imagine as well this was WWE trying to wink, wink, nudge, nudge that maybe Shawn was the same Shawn he had been in the 1990s, but it was quite clear in 2008 that he had matured a lot. I don't care though, because again, seeing Batista and Shawn Michaels in the same ring did feel like big time, so I like this, and you rarely see people talk about it, mostly because they probably do describe it as 2 + 2 = potato, but sometimes potatoes taste good. Number 1, WWE's PG shift wasn't too noticeable. On SmackDown at least. We talked about it over on the binge-watching of Raw in 2008, and John Cena goes way too over the top, but because Vince McMahon was putting all his energy of PG into John, well, on SmackDown they kind of got a free pass. Because it all went down on the 22nd of July, meaning the first PG WWE show is really the 25th of July SmackDown. I mean, you're not really going to notice anything when you do sit down with it, and the first 2 things that fans actually saw on this episode were Edge cheating on Vicky Guerrero, and then, well, MVP suggesting that Jeff Hardy's substance abuse problems killed his dog. This is pretty flippin' adult. Now down the line, of course, the much younger skewing content was going to come to the forefront, but it's not like one day Vince McMahon woke up and said, oh pal, we're PG now, and all of a sudden ducklings were running around on the screen. It took a few months. You also had a really high quality roster who were having great matches all the time, which most definitely helped. And if you were going to compare the bell to bell from the Attitude Era to here, well, depends what you want from wrestling, but I imagine a lot of people would say this was better. Also, ponder me this, my friends. Do you really feel like the Jeff Hardy MVP situation would have been better if somebody had killed the other person's dog and fed it to them? In case you don't understand that reference, that did happen in the late 90s, and let's never do that again. I mean, if nothing else, it's just really, really mean. So sure, PG was restrictive, but it wasn't terminally so. So, my friends, for the purposes of this video, we are going to class the Ruthless Aggression Era as 2002 to 2008, and I know now you're saying, but Simon, what about this day? We have to come up with some rules, and these are the rules that I have decided. That does clock it at around about 6 years, which means there's a bunch of pay-per-views. What happens now if you do go back in time and watch every single one of these events? Well, I tell you, you absolutely get a mixed bag. So what information should you take away? I'm Simon Miller. Let's go. Number 25, Vengeance 2002 was one hell of a kickoff. So talk about a way to make a first impression, because if Vince was calling to see more ruthless aggression, well, at least some of the roster heard him, including The Rock, Undertaker, and Kurt Angle. This was indeed Vengeance 2002, and if you've never seen this match, you'll be absolutely surprised, because those three guys don't really feel like they gelled together, but actually this was one of the best triple threat matches the WWE had put on at the time. Every single individual totally understands what they bring to the table, and they make sure that everybody else gets their shtick in. It's just a super entertaining, fun match with a good finish. You also get a tables bout pitting Bubba Ray and Spike Dudley versus Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and you get John Cena's pay-per-view debut versus Chris Jericho, so it's got historical context too. Somehow Brock Lesnar is taking on RD for the Intercontinental Championship, and Christian Lance Storm are taking on Edge and Hulk Hogan, so really this does have everything. So it really is an unbelievably fun start to this era, and you do get some story stuff too, mostly Stephanie McMahon, who was the GM of SmackDown, and Eric Bischoff, who was the GM of Raw, going, oh man, one of us needs to sign Triple H. Shawn Michaels also jumps on that ball because he starts winking, nudging that maybe Degeneration X is going to return. And even lesser bouts like Jamie Noble versus Billy Kidman and Booker T versus Big Show, where they're alright, man. It's the same for Jeff Hardy versus William Regal. So if you want to walk into my house and say, ha, this couldn't have gone any better, I would totally agree with you. Number 24, the old Madison Square Garden is dearly missed. So if you are of a certain age, you probably remember two specific things. The first would be Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker from SummerSlam 1998, and 10 years on at the Royal Rumble 2008 when John Cena made his surprise return at the Royal Rumble, and that wonderful, wonderful entranceway that looked about as long as your foot. Now, if you've ever wondered why we returned to Madison Square Garden today, it does not look like this. It's because it got a massive upgrade soon after that, and basically started to look like every single other arena in the world. Now, of course, those behind the scenes at MSG had to do this. You have to move with the times, but it just had such an iconic feel, and so many important moments happened with that small entranceway. When you do see it during the Ruthless Aggression Era, you're gonna feel a pang of sadness. I suppose it's nostalgia, but we'll go with sad. It would also take you back to WrestleMania 20, which of course was a huge WrestleMania at the time. And the other positive of this is, of course, Madison Square Garden is sold as a huge arena. So when you knew the WWE was going to get in there and you were going to get a different look too, well, you just shoved your hands together and you created something fresh. I suppose this helps even more when you are a touring brand like World Wrestling Entertainment, because it means when you do get these shows, your eyes go, well, this is nice. It doesn't look like the 42,797 buildings we're usually in. I mean, you could even make the claim that John Cena's surprise return at that Royal Rumble is more impactful because of this, because as soon as you see it, even when you are scrolling through TikTok or whatever, instantly you know what it is. But look, you can't live in the past forever, but when you are going through Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views and you see them head in Madison Square Garden, it does make them more fun, I'm just saying. Number 23, the 2003 commentary feud. So really, when it comes down to your commentators, they should never be feuding with each other, because all it does is take away from the story that your commentators are trying to get over in the ring. We all remember when Michael Cole went bad guy, which was a huge distraction, but actually back at Unforgiven 2003, you also get Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman beating Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, and the stipulation was whoever does win this then goes behind the desk, and if you can believe it, Al and Jonathan actually won. I don't want to be that guy, but I do not remember this. Now, of course, this story point didn't last long, and mostly Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman were going to commentate on Heat. They did actually supplant JR and King on the flagship show. Things get even crazier when you do go through JR's in-ring career, which is something he never wanted to do, because he has 9 matches between 1999 and 2011. There's also rumblings at the start of this that Coach wanted to work matches as well, which he also did, even right back when he was a backstage interviewer in 1999 and 2000. Somehow, during the Ruthless Aggression era, he's always falling into some sort of physical situation too, but hey, when you do watch it, it kind of looks like he's enjoying himself. If you want to know about the rest of Unforgiven 2003, it was indeed headlined by Goldberg beating Triple H to become the world champion, and you have a very nice match between Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels. You also get Kane versus Shane McMahon, which we're going to move on, and if you know, you do know. But I can't believe if you brought up this show to anybody else, they would go, oh yes, that's when Coach and Snow took on JR and King, but it happened. Why the Ruthless Aggression era is so weird. There's a lot of narratives where you look back now, You're like, what the flub? Number 22, the weird main events. Now, of course, people like Triple H, Kurt Angle, and John Cena headlined loads of pay-per-views during the Ruthless Aggression days, and you could also give a nod to Batista, The Undertaker, and Edge. So it's not like WWE didn't have superstars that could fit into the main event role, and more often than not, they did a very good job. Given that this was also the period where we separated Raw and SmackDown, though, I think Vince McMahon was trying many a new thing, especially as we did at the Great American Bash 2004, when the main event is The Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys. And no, that's not a verbal typo, it was the Dead Man taking on Bubba and Devon in a 2-on-1 handicap match. It's also crazy this did go on last, because do you know what else is on this card? JBL versus Eddie Guerrero in a Texas bull rope encounter. You also get Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero for the Cruiserweight title, and while that was never going to main event, well, the Bubba Ray Devon Taker match was so bizarre, maybe it should have done. Just in case you don't know as well, you can look at the image on screen right now, and yes, this is also the match when Paul Bearer was murdered after the fact. And I'm just going to leave it there because we have talked about it before, but once again, what the hell are we doing? There were other main events throughout this period too, because at Vengeance 2006 it was DX versus the Spirit Squad. Listen, that feud was kind of fun for all the wrong reasons, but just stick it in the middle of the card. Nothing will ever be as bad as the Extreme Elimination Chamber match at December to Dismember in late 2006, which is often voted as the worst WWE match in history. And of course there's Undertaker versus Mark Henry, which is just an odd choice to close out Unforgiven 2007. I mean, they're big stars, but it didn't feel like a main event. Of course, fans just raised a little bit of an eyebrow because they were still paying $50 for some of these. I understand that WWE were trying to get Raw and SmackDown over as separate brands. Maybe they just didn't have the star power to back it up. Number 21, New Year's Revolution was risky. So WWE knew that they needed to be careful with New Year's Revolution in 2005. The show was beamed live from Puerto Rico on the 9th of January, which was only mere weeks before the Royal Rumble that was set to air on the 30th of January. Now, of course, usually when WWE kicks off a brand new year, the first pay-per-view or big event is the Royal Rumble. But clearly Vince McMahon got into this New Year Revolution idea because it did happen 3 times between 2005 and 2007. By 2008, he decided to put it in the trash again, although the last time we saw the name was a house show tour in 2020, which yes, of course, was before the COVID shutdown. Outside of that, Triple H actually brought the moniker back as a subheading for a special edition of SmackDown 2. There was also that Day 1 event in 2022. I mean, that had a different name, but it was the same concept. These days, if you are a brand new fan, I suppose the best comparison is what WWE is trying to do with their Netflix anniversary. But of course, those are part of your subscription. When WWE was trying to sell a pay-per-view before the Royal Rumble, well, let's just say they didn't sell very well because people were saving their cash. Now, the shows themselves aren't actually that bad at all, and you get some super historic moments, particularly when it comes to the Money in the Bank briefcase. But otherwise, it was just an attempt of something that didn't really work. Maybe you can even put the blame on the Royal Rumble. People just love it too much. Number 20, Brock Lesnar only had one bad pay-per-view match. Now, of course, Brock Lesnar didn't last that long in the Ruthless Aggression era because he was going to leave WWE. But you can kind of bookend his appearances, with the first being against Rob Van Dam at Vengeance 2002, the last being against Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania 20, and we all remember that. Now, loads of people will remember his very strange encounter with Hardcore Holly at the Royal Rumble 2004. And actually, if you do go back and watch it now, even though it was a strange match to put together, it's totally fine. You wouldn't even call it bad. I mean, it only goes about 6 minutes, so what can you really do? And while Holly was not a credible challenger for Brock's WWE title, listen, go watch it now, we were plugging a gap. After that RVD match at Vengeance 2002, however, Brock went on to beat The Rock at SummerSlam and have a feud with The Undertaker at Unforgiven and No Mercy. He then has matches with The Big Show at Survivor Series, which is way better than you do remember. And in 2003, he was taking on Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19. John Cena at Backlash is also good. And then he's going against Kurt again at SummerSlam, Taker at No Mercy, and the now absolutely iconic world title match at No Way Out 2004 when he loses to Eddie Guerrero. So sure, you can kind of raise an eyebrow when you get to the Goldberg match, but even then there are extenuating circumstances. So really, Brock Lesnar turned up in the WWE, he got a massive push, and he proved to everybody, well, maybe they are doing the right thing because he's pretty flipping great. It would have been super interesting to see what would have happened if he did carry on 2004. That didn't happen. So there's no point thinking about it, even more so because this was 20 years ago, and I don't want to travel back in time. Number 19, sometimes 2003 felt like latter-day WCW. Now this could surprise some people because, of course, the WCW invasion angle ended in November 2001, and the company really did fast-forward that thing. It really hurts when you watch it today because Ric Flair joins immediately after all of this, which makes your face palm, and then you jump forward 4 or 5 months, and the NWO debuts, so what the flub were we doing? By mid-2002, though, Hulk Hogan was back at the top of the cards as as Vince barked about the Ruthless Aggression Era on TV when Scott Steiner signed later that year. Goldberg then turns up in April 2003, and of course Kevin Nash and Triple H worked at Bad Blood, so if all of a sudden you want to go, this feels like WCW, you're right, it did, because all the WCW guys were there. Now it wouldn't have been as eye-raising if this had have happened during the Invasion angle, but that's the whole point. It's like we hit the play button 2 years too late. You can see that Vince McMahon changes his mind come 2004 as well, because the direction changed greatly. And go back and watch Bad Blood 2003, it really does feel like a WCW pay-per-view from 1999. I mean, Scott Steiner was in the opener versus Test, Booker T wrestled Christian for the Intercontinental title, and Goldberg worked Chris Jericho in a grudge match. Ric Flair then walks down the aisle to face Shawn Michaels, and Eric Bischoff is involved in shenanigans with Steve Austin. So there you go. Tick, tick, tick. I mean, if Ernest the Cat Miller had turned up, you wouldn't have been too surprised. Or actually, WW never did that, and they should have done. Ernest the Cat Miller was great. Number 18, Taboo Tuesday, was kind of ahead of its time. So WWE did debut a brand new pay-per-view in 2004, and the concept was simple. Fans were going to vote online for match types and which wrestlers they wanted to see face one another. That was pretty ingenious, because while the show did not take off and was gone by 2008, even when it went through a redub of Cyber Sunday in 2006, it did show once again that when it comes to brand new technology, WWE was happy to jump in with both feet, and they've kind of always done that. You can't blame them for giving this a go either, because putting control at the fingertips of fans is what most people say they do want. It also meant when you got to these shows, they had a unique flavor. It was basically an interactive event that didn't feel too dissimilar for you playing GM mode in SmackDown vs. Raw, so there is kind of a charm to all this. It's super fun to go back now as well to see what people did decide, such as Randy Orton vs. Ric Flair that did go down inside a steel cage. The joy was it also could have gone down under submission rules or a falls count anywhere, but the fans picked the first one. There's also an amazing story about Shelton Benjamin winning the Intercontinental title, which he only learned seconds before he did walk to the ring with Chris Jericho, because of course nobody knew. Also wasn't the worst idea to get some kind of customer engagement to figure out which direction they should head in, so I quite like this idea. And while it wouldn't work today because of the explosion of social media, it was nice that WWE gave it a go. Number 17, the curious history of the One Night Stand pay-per-view. So of course the WWE produced ECW One Night Stand events in 2005 and 2006 was super popular. We went back to the Hammerstein Ballroom, it was a big salute to a promotion many people loved, it made you feel good in your Tootsie Toes. I think the WWE then got a little bit confused because come 2007, well, they just made it a generic Raw, SmackDown and ECW show instead. Surprise, surprise, that made people sad. I mean, given how awful the ECW brand was being treated by that point, why couldn't we have just kept this going in 2007, 2008, 2009, and even 2010? I mean, once again, nostalgia would have floated away, but it was far better than we got here because it kind of just blended into the pay-per-view calendar and it didn't feel special at all. I mean, come 2009, WWE threw this out anyway, and surprise, surprise, guess what it was replaced with? That's right, Extreme Rules. That was also a watered-down version of the same idea, so let's just face it, it didn't really work. And there were some merit to a couple of these cars, because you do get RVD versus Randy Orton in a stretcher match, and the Hardys versus the world's greatest tag team in a ladder bout. Edge versus Batista in a steel cage come 2007 is also worthwhile. If you jump forward to 2008, you get Batista versus Shawn Michaels, Undertaker versus Edge, and Triple H versus Randy Orton with various gimmicks, which is what they should have done at WrestleMania. So none of these were crap, and we are going back looking with hindsight glasses on. I just kind of feel like One Night Stand should have always meant ECW, because once again those shows in 2005 and 2006 just ruled. It also kind of started this trend where because you did have a pay-per-view called Extreme Rules, you then had to figure out which match was going to be Extreme Rules, which is what we also did with Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber. It's just too much. Number 16, John Cena proves he can work with the Great Khali. So sometimes you do just have to give people their flowers. We are about to talk about John Cena. As I am saying these words to you, his career has just come to the end at the tail end of 2025, and of course he's gone down as one of the best professional wrestlers and sports entertainers of all time. He also had so many damn moments in his 20-plus year career that people are still talking about, but one we should shout about more is the fact he went out there and proved he could have great matches with flipping Great Khali. Now, Cena went on to face Khali at both Judgment Day and One Night Stand in 2007, and anybody shouting out, oh, well, that man can't work, needs to go back and check these, because my gosh, he drags this giant kicking and screaming into a very decent bout at Judgment Day, and then a really good Falls Count Anywhere match at One Night Stand. And listen, it was always going to be hard for Khali because he was so massive, but go and see what everybody else on that roster tried to do with him. It did not work. John deserves a medal for his efforts. He basically understood that he was going to have to fight from underneath against somebody that was super huge, and sometimes he would sell it as, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to be killed. It really is amazing to watch right now with other stories that do the rounds. But let's also not forget that John Cena had excellent bouts with Randy Orton, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Michaels, Edge, and many more, so no wonder he went on to become the guy. I mean, he was super duper popular, selling merchandise, and he knew how WWE main events were meant to work. It just kind of made sense. Number 15, December to Dismember, was set up to fail. So as aforementioned, WWE had already run one ECW pay-per-view in 2006 with the One Night Stand. It ended with that awesome title change between RVD and John Cena. So when you do compare that to what WWE did at the end of the year with December to Dismember, flub me, that show stood no chance. I'm not trying to be horrible here either, because if you do make it to the big leagues, you've done something right. But I do not think an undercard of Balls Mahoney versus Matt Striker, Daivari versus Tommy Dreamer, or Kevin Thorne and Ariel versus Mike Knox and Kelly Kelly is necessarily worth $50. I mean, this picture of Paul Heyman has often done the rounds during the main event. I don't think you facepalm like that if you're happy. He basically could see firsthand that his constant arguments with Vince McMahon about the brand were going to end all this, which is why shortly after this he did walk away. WWE also gave this pay-per-view zero chance of succeeding going in because it was sandwiched between two main roster shows. You had Survivor Series on the 26th of November, and you had Armageddon on the 17th of December, and this ECW offering went down on the 3rd of December. So who the hell was going to spend their money on that? They didn't draw that big a crowd either, because only 4,800 people did go and sit down to watch it, which was nothing compared to what Raw and SmackDown was doing. The Extreme Elimination Chamber was also an awful sell, because what was the USP? We were going to use weapons, even though the Elimination Chamber was meant to be one big weapon. So it's no surprise that WWE changed tact on ECW after this. And once again, it really did come back to the fact that Vince McMahon wanted to go in the A direction, and Paul Heyman wanted to go in the B direction. But you all know what happened with ECW after this. Let's just say it was not good. Number 14, the Great American Bash, is pretty damn bad. So every single time you go and watch a Great American Bash pay-per-view from the Ruthless Aggression period, well, there's always at least one match that makes you go, what the flub? Now let's shout out the good ones first, because in 2004 you get Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero, which is great. And we've already talked about that JBL Eddie Guerrero bull rope match from the same year. These are good. However, we've also touched upon the 2004 main event that was the Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys. And in 2005 you had a very strange match between Orlando Jordan and Chris Benoit. Then in 2006 you had the Undertaker and Big Show in the Punjabi prison. Let's not forget this was meant to be the Undertaker versus the Great Khali, hence the stipulation match. Then the Khali was pulled and the Big Show was thrown in there, and also none of us could see because it was impossible to see through the Punjabi prison. By 2009, for some reason, WWE also shot on the event's title to just The Bash, but nobody was fooled. We knew what this was. I think mostly if you were an old school fan, it just felt like a stain on a legacy built by Ric Flair and Terry Funk back in 1989, and of course Sting versus Flair in 1990. You even had DDP versus Randy Savage in 1997. Now actually is why we owe a big thanks to NXT, because their branded events of the Great American Bash have been far stronger. But we are talking about the Ruthless Aggression Era here. I don't know what happened every single time we got to the Great American Bash, but most of them were not very good. Number 13, Batista versus Randy Orton. So Randy Orton was the first member of Evolution not called Triple H or Ric Flair to get a push, and when that did happen, it kind of felt like Batista was going to have a great career, but maybe he would just settle into the upper mid-card. Instead, the animal exploded in late 2004 and won the Royal Rumble in 2005, before he went on to have some great matches with Triple H and became the World Heavyweight Champion. Big Dave was flipping awesome. I mean, you should go and watch his title defenses against Triple H at Vengeance in June, and even when he does jump to SmackDown, it feels like a big deal. He is flipping Batista. Actually, his program with JBL is pretty good too. Meanwhile, at the same time, Randy Orton's 2004 push had been triggered way too early, and even though he did eventually win the world title, we kind of had to reverse all this because the fans just weren't buying it. It's incredible to look back on, especially going on to know the career Randy Orton would have, but Vince McMahon was just so desperate to get to the end point instead of building the beginning point. It really was the fact that WWE was desperate for a brand new babyface and picked Randy, even though Orton was much better at being a heel. These days, when you do go back through Batista's career though, we do not give it the credit it is due, especially when it comes to the little things like his entrance. I mean, you have super actors like Timothy Chalamet talking about how great that was. Once again, put some respect on Dave Batista's name. It had to be a massive relief too, because 1 year prior, Brock Lesnar had left the company. Now, we essentially had a new Brock Lesnar. I mean, you know what I mean. They did kind of look the same. But Batista has every right to be inducted into the Hall of Fame one day. Really was that damn good. Number 12, the WWE thought about scrapping the Survivor Series. So back in 2010 on a conference call, Vince McMahon had looked at the numbers and he told his meeting, you know what, I think the Survivor Series is obsolete. Now this did indeed leak out to the public and fans went crazy, which meant McMahon had to change his mind. But still, that's how close we were to losing the pay-per-view. If you do go back and watch the 2002 to 2007 versions though, it does kind of make sense. Because even though the Survivor Series was once dubbed the Big Four, it just kind of feels like the company doesn't care. I mean, first and foremost, they got rid of the elimination match concept, which was dumb because that was the whole point, and they introduced a brand new elimination chamber match type, which was good, but also kind of felt a little bit uninspired. It's almost amazing that Vince McMahon did change his mind, because of course he was happy to bid off the King of the Ring and the Intercontinental title at various points during his tenure. And even when you get to 2007, what are WWE doing in order to try and keep this relevant? A Hell in a Cell bout between Batista and The Undertaker. Now that is awesome, as is a great Edge return, but it was WWE booking this damn thing into the ground and then getting mad that somebody had booked it into the ground. I mean, wonders never cease. Number 11, changing the cage affected Hell in a Cell. So a lot of folks seem to have forgotten this even happened, but WWE did introduce a taller and slimmer looking Hell in a Cell structure at Unforgiven 2006, with the match that saw Triple H and Shawn Michaels take on Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and The Big Show. Not gonna lie, I totally forgot that was a thing too. In fact, I kind of feel like it was made up. However, if you do compare and contrast the Simline structure to the older one, which is what we're doing on the screen right now, as you can see, it's night and day. The issue, however, is that the new look seemed a little bit too roomy after the switch. Then post Ruthless Aggression, Hell in a Cell lost all its luster when they turned it into a standalone show in 2009, and as we've already talked about, started forcing some feuds to go into the Hell in a Cell because yes, we had a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell. It really was a huge error, as was this new cage design, because to kind of sum it up as best as we can, it just looked a little bit too nice, a little bit too shiny, a little bit too pristine, and it did look more like a shrunk down version of Hell in a Cell, and that just confused everyone. Now I'm sure from a production angle it looked better for television, especially when WWE were trying to sell in advertising, but that doesn't mean you have to care about that if you're a fan. You want things like cage matches and the Hell in a Cell to be total bloodbaths, which brings us to matches like 2019, Seth Rollins versus Bray Wyatt. But that's a different story for a different day. And no, it wasn't a major problem by any means, because it's all about the work that goes on inside the ring. But it is worth drawing your attention to when you do get into a big retrospective. I mean, the Hell in a Cell and steel cage matches were fine. I don't know why we had to fiddle with them. Number 10, 2008 started an unwanted trend. So No Way Out 2008 saw WWE put on multiple Elimination Chamber bouts for title matches at WrestleMania. This happened shortly after the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, which kind of allowed creative to correct their own booking if need be. Plus, in 2010, what did we change the name to? It was the Elimination Chamber. So what we're getting at is a point we've brought up a couple of times during this video, because yes, if you want to pinpoint a show that did start this slow roll towards WWE booking being more about the calendar than actually making sure certain match types fit the feuds, well, it's probably this one. We're on the road to WrestleMania, and Vince McMahon decided, well, it's more important to make sure we get all the little bits in place. And how do we do that? We use the Elimination Chamber, so the match became the selling point and not the story. I mean, you can't fault the Chamber bouts at No Way Out 2008, because good grief, they all kill each other. But when you sit down and watch this one, you really can feel like WWE is using it as a corrective tool, or maybe possibly even a crutch the writers could lean on. That also sort of affected the Rumble too, because you could pick somebody to win, knowing that other star down here, well, they can just go on and win it in February. I mean, why should fans get pumped for the Rumble if January, if WWE can just change course in February? And I would argue they're far better at dealing with that today, but back during the Ruthless Aggression era, well, it does shift around a lot. Number 9, The Rock vs. Hogan should have been a one-off. The Rock vs. Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18 is still held up as one of the finest WWE spectacles ever. I mean, you can get into whether it was technically good, but who cares about that? That's not what wrestling is about. It's about noise and how it made you feel, and this one is all time. What most people do not talk about, though, which kind of ties into our entry here, is their rematch at No Way Out 2003. Now, of course, this wasn't a patch on the WrestleMania 18 original because it couldn't be, and by this point, Hulk Hogan was the babyface and The Rock was most definitely a heel. Now, it was perfectly fine and the fans get into it, but once again, WWE overthought this, because you even have Sylvain Grenier as the special guest referee, and yes, he was a bad guy. I mean, you can figure it out. This was mostly done because a year had passed and WWE wanted to cash in on something that was so easy. So sure, it is fun to go back and watch it now, but of course, there's always the argument that if you just do a one and done, and you have something like WrestleMania 18, well, it kind of makes it feel more special. I certainly live in a lane that if you want to do that, just ignore No Way Out 2003. As long as nobody brings it up, you can forget about it. Of course, if a new fan came up to you today and said, I want to see that Rock versus Hogan match, you would go to Mania 18. If they asked if they tussled again, you'd be like, yeah, maybe, but really, who even cares? Number 8, Vince versus Stephanie is still pretty damn awkward. So one of the criticisms WWE had was during the Ruthless Aggression era was that they should leave the McMahon stuff behind. Now that had been very successful during the Attitude Era, but the audience wanted something new, and instead, you got to No Mercy 2003, and Vince McMahon and Stephanie McMahon did a flipping proper match. It was also an I Quit Loser Gets Fired, and if you haven't seen this, believe you me, you do not want to. Because this 10-minute brawl saw Vince choke out his own flesh and blood with a steel pipe. There really is nothing to enjoy here either, because it's so brutal it gets a bit awkward, and you have Linda McMahon at ringside selling concern as her husband chokes the life out of their daughter. I don't think these words should be able to be said out loud. You also get the criticism that after the success of Batista, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Randy Orton, WWE should focus on building even more stars, and instead you get this on a match on a pay-per-view. Like I say, unless you want to see something that will make you cringe, you do not need to watch this. Now why they did do it, hey ho, we can't change history. Number 7, the UK only pay-per-views had to go. So I went to every single one of these. Some were called Insurrection and some were called Rebellion, and they weren't very good. I mean, they were fun because you got to go down and see some stars, but they never tied into storylines, and WWE wouldn't even reference them on television. The last one of these went down in 2003, and it was called Insurrection. And believe you me, that one was not good because I was there. Now, once again, you did get some stars in the sense that Christian versus Booker T was going for the Intercontinental title, and you got Triple H versus Kevin Nash in a street fight, but you also got Goldust versus Rico. Now, I think the reason I look back on these with so much disdain is because once they did go away, what did WWE start doing from 2004 onwards? Raw and SmackDown were going to be live for the United Kingdom. Believe you me, that was the most exciting thing ever. I mean, we didn't get another proper PLE until Clash of the Castle in 2022, but then we got Money in the Bank 2023, so I am going to focus on the present. It just makes me laugh now because I can talk to some of my American friends about Insurrection Rebellion, and they look at me like I do have two heads. But again, I was there. I saw these. They sucked. Number 6, going stadium crazy, saved WrestleMania. Now, once again, if you're a brand new fan and you go back and watch an old WrestleMania, you will see it in a normal arena and be like, where the flub is the open-top stadium? Well, they weren't doing it. Now, it all goes back to Vince McMahon reportedly being unhappy with WrestleMania 19 in 2003, and he blamed Seattle for it because he felt like they didn't get a good atmosphere because, of course, yes, it was in a big old building. By the time WrestleMania 20 rolled around, though, they did go back to Madison Square Garden for this very reason, and it did make sense at the time, but there is no denying that neither the Staples Center for WrestleMania 21 or the All-State Arena for WrestleMania 22 was able to grab hold of this same madness. Ford Field and the Citrus Bowl for 23 and 24 respectively made WrestleMania feel big time again, and ever since then, if you can believe it, WWE has never wavered from this. So in short, the Ruthless Aggression Era did see the last WrestleManias in an arena, and actually, it does kind of make it feel small time. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan when they did go to these big stadiums, because when you are in a tighter place, the noise is better, but when you see thousands of people going mad for WrestleMania, well, that's just cool. WWE just seemed to have more faith in their own abilities from 2007 onwards, and aside from WrestleMania 36, which we do not need to talk about, they never look back. I mean, imagine they all of a sudden did go to an indoor building for a WrestleMania, people would go nuts. I actually would hazard a guess they're never going to do that again. Number 5, 1 Royal Rumble per night is enough. Now, I have said this time and time again, and it goes to the Elimination Chamber too. I kind of think that every single year you should look at the stories and decide, do we need a men's Royal Rumble and do we need a women's Royal Rumble, and just pick one. At the same time, do I really care? No. I love the Royal Rumble so much, I will sit down and take. When you do go back and watch all the Royal Rumbles between 2003 and 2008, one of the huge positives is you can do one idea there and it feels way bigger because you don't then have to redo it later on in the night. There's only so many things you can do in a flipping Royal Rumble. It also actually means you can run more matches as well, especially with world titles on the line. And that's one of the things that the old Royal Rumbles do have. You could have a mega world title match and totally believe that maybe that championship was going to change hands. Now, obviously, WWE was struggling to present a women's division before 2018, and that's why it's actually far more important to have that women's Royal Rumble. But ultimately, it comes down to less is more. Once again, I'm not saying to get rid of either one of these Royal Rumbles. You should just pick and choose. But once again, I kind of understand the counterpoint too. It just feels like you can put more importance when you only have one, and that makes all the sense in the world. Number 4, Dick Jim brand exclusive pay-per-views was smart. Now, I never liked it when Raw got its own pay-per-view and SmackDown got its own pay-per-view, because when you sat down to see how many events were in the calendar for a certain year, you were like, flub me sideways, this is ridiculous. By 2003, though, Bad Blood in June started the role of Raw and SmackDown exclusives, and of course the only exceptions to that were the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. This format then continued all the way to No Way Out 2007, which was of course the final single branded pay-per-view of the Ruthless Aggression Era. It really is the right choice because far too many of those single brand shows had pitiful undercards because once again WWE didn't have the stars and they didn't have the roster. If you want to describe many of them as special episodes of Raw or SmackDown, I agree with you, and you were asking people to pay $50. Now it did actually help those big four because all of a sudden everybody was on the same show, so that felt exciting. But you don't want to have to slog through things just to get to that. You want every single month to be pretty flipping good. By the time we did get to Backlash 2007 as well, fans were super excited because you were having the entirety of the roster on that show. Just felt like a bigger deal. I mean, even just having all 3 logos on the poster made people smile because you were paying money for these. Shouldn't have to suffer. Number 3, the bespoke sets need a comeback. So you can go on any WWE message board right now and something people will say is, when it comes to the big events, we need bespoke and unique sets. And of course, WWE often does this for WrestleMania, but back during the Ruthless Aggression Era, it feels like every single pay-per-view has its own set, and yeah, it works, it gets your eyes excited, and your eyes are the first thing that take note. Now really, WWE has watered these down because they want to be a bit Disney, meaning whether you go to any kind of show, you understand what you are going to get. When you do first walk into an arena and go, oh my gosh, this feels totally different, that gets you excited in your tum-tum. I mean, what do people love to talk about when it comes to WrestleMania? What the flub is the set gonna look like? And even people in WWE 2K25's creation suite have proved that you can do this. And listen, it's not gonna happen because it does cost money, and also WWE would rather ram the buildings and a big old set takes away some seats, but I think it's a cool thing that we do miss. And when you do go through the Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views, well, it just makes it even worse. Number 2, women got just 2 matches over 10 minutes. So we've already talked about the fact that before 2018, WWE was not booking the women's division very well. And go and listen to some of the stories, particularly from the Divas era. They were told by producers, you're not even allowed to punch other women in the face because that's what the men do. It's the most redundant sentence I've ever heard in my life. Incredibly though, between Vengeance 2002 and the Great American Bash 2008, women only worked matches longer than 10 minutes twice on pay-per-view. I mean, that is ridiculous. The first is a bra and panties gauntlet that saw Ashley Mazzaro beat Tori Wilson, Victoria Maria, and Candice Michelle at New Year's Revolution 2006. And yes, that goes 11 minutes and 1 second. Meanwhile, Trish Stratus versus Lita at Unforgiven 2006 goes 11 minutes 35 seconds. The closest in terms of times to those were Jazz versus Trish at Insurrection 2003 that goes 9 minutes 49 seconds, and a Diva Talent Invitational at No Way Out 2007 that goes 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Beth Phoenix versus Melina at One Night Stand 2008 that gets 9 minutes 14, and Melina versus Mickie James at Backlash 2007 gets 9 minutes 2. So what that tells us is that an awful lot of women's bouts on pay-per-views during this era went less than 4 minutes. What the flub can you do in 4 minutes? And there were often cards where you didn't get one at all. So thank goodness WWE has changed these times. This goes back to my Royal Rumble debate. I would much rather have 47 Royal Rumbles on one show than not go back to this. It was dumb, it was stupid, and it was short-sighted. Let's move forward. Number 1, the era lasted a little too long. So the earliest knockings of Ruthless Aggression saw WWE persist with Attitude Era flavor, while simultaneously building fresher stars like Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton. Then once those names were established, it became clear that the company then needed to embrace something new and get rid of the Attitude Era together. Let's just say that Vince McMahon had a real tough time figuring out how to do that. Because he was correctly caught halfway between both of these periods, and that meant come 2006 and 2007, WWE starts to feel pretty damn stale, and it was a year before they would change to PG. You can also feel it in the stands as well, because a new generation of younger fans had started to emerge, and they all wanted something a little bit different to the norm. And that might sound like heresy to some, especially if you were brought up on the Ruthless Aggression era, but given that the Attitude Era was only in effect between 1997 and 2002, and this one went from 2002 to 2008, oh yeah, it was just a little bit too long. I mean, if you can't do the math, that is 6 years compared to 5, and while that doesn't sound like a massive difference, when you do watch it, it is. Also, everybody talks about the Attitude Era, and less people talk about the Ruthless Aggression Era. Just kind of felt like WWE should have embraced new ideas, and they didn't. Know of anything else that went down during these Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views that you want to talk about? Well, make sure you drop a comment below before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to get even more information about this in your life. But otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you. I'll talk to you again soon.